So good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. We're 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm with Saul Spady. I just coined I didn't coin a new phrase. Charles co-coined a phrase. Saul Spady, a social entrepreneur from childhood, and he's going to tell his story a little bit. Kevin Howard, an author and an incredible podcaster, Breadcrumbs. He's written a book, Onward at Last, the 2018 election edition. We're going to kind of get into that.
24, coach.
2024.
2024 election edition. Golly,
The last
dementia is
presidential
setting
election. How
in.
about that?
People are going to watch my podcast just for the dementia
They,
moments.
they, they're going to want to know, you got a beverage over there, coach? Have you
No,
started early?
no. I'm 100. I go. I don't know that I'm opposed to the idea at all. I have a friend telling me I need to start a new podcast, and I'm like, I'm on 3 now. So, but he calls it Bourbon Babble, so anybody can steal that. So I
Oh, I
can't
love
have
it.
it.
Bourbon barrel. Okay.
But Bourbon
Let's
Bourbon
Babble.
babble. We're babbling
Bourbon Babble.
over our bourbon.
Well, bourbon, which started with the idea that I'm fixated with the idea of getting, there's an Orlando personal injury attorney, John Morgan, and he's created a new political party, the Capitalist Party, and I'm trying to get him on the podcast. But let's jump right into
the
this. So
capitalist party.
that's John
Is that
Morgan.
I want to know what's the difference between that and the establishment political parties.
I don't know, and I don't know that he knows. All I know is this: he's taking it serious. He's a billionaire. He's throwing
he's a
money
billionaire.
to.
Okay.
I've
Yeah,
reached out
he's
to the
pro.
Tallahassee
We-
law firm that he sent money over to start the party. They definitely said it's real. This is not fake news. He is starting this party.
Oh man, maybe he'll join the quality of coalition movement, the quality of life coalition movement. You'll appreciate this, Kevin. I kind of make fun of third parties a little bit because I
Mhm.
always ask them, "What's the issue?" And they're like, "Well, the issue is a third party, right?" And you're like, "No, but like, what's the thing that brings us all together?" And you're like, "We need a third party." And to a degree, I don't think you can find that big jump until you find like, are we gonna fix the border? That's what Trump was all about, right? And coalesce some party about that. Obama was gonna fix healthcare, and he kind of brought that energy to it. That was an issue. It's this new age type of third party bullshit, man, where they're just like, it's gonna be kumbaya, but they can't even tell you they're gonna fill a damn pothole.
Yeah. Hey, Saul, you're describing No Labels. Remember them?
Oh
And they
yeah.
had all that money and some principles on each side, and it was fizzled out. Didn't even get anyone to run for president last time around. Yeah,
Well,
it's
I'm
just
so old and so much older than you guys. I don't know how much older I am than Kevin. I think we discussed this, and it's possible we're not that much difference in age. But I remember Ross Perot, and
yes.
he was this new phenomena, and he was going to invest his own money, and the figure
And he
was
did.
$100 million, and it was kind of like the whole Austin Powers. That's not a lot of money anymore, you know. It's like, and he. And then he just dropped out of the race. So nobody, I don't know what happened with that, but he was
Oh
just.
no, in
No, he went through. He
'92.
got like
Yeah,
18%. He got the
yeah,
highest
he
amount of
did
any third party candidate in
absolutely 100
history, and
years.
and he ran on an issue. Like, to be fair, it was
Yes,
to balance the budget and to get which would have probably pretty useful back then, right? Because he affected the Clinton Bush campaign, right? That
yeah.
He
Oh
CEO
yeah,
was
did.
Clinton.
George
They
H.
say
W.
he
Bush. Exactly.
basically enabled Clinton to win. Basically, long story short, he
A
gave Clinton
pathway,
the
a
win.
pathway to victory, yeah, for sure.
Right,
It was a
right.
pathway. It was, but no, I mean, but no, he did have a full agenda. And remember, he bought an hour of primetime TV and did and laid out his agenda on the board. I mean, no, Ross was interesting. He was an interesting character, and I was in law school at the time, and I had he was, I would say, he- in the same way that the independents leaned towards RFK Jr. in 2024, you
Mm.
know, a lot of the independents in 92 lean towards Ross Perot. And so I agree. I think he did give that hurt H.W. Bush more than it hurt Clinton. And so
It
Clinton was
did
able to.
very much so. It did. And I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to jump in here because the reason I made the connection between Saul Spady and Kevin Howard, the reason I made the connection was Katie Wilson. So the reason now I'm going to arrive at my landing. So I'm reading this Katie Wilson headline. First state of the city speech draws praise for tone, but questions on specific policies. And I can tell you this first before we jump into that conversation. Ross Perot was very big on specifics. He literally
Yes.
would do 1 hour and 15-minute commercials that he paid for out of his
Yeah.
pocket, and they were
Yeah.
extremely specific. And I think that was also a part of his fascination. I'm not knocking him as a candidate. I'm not knocking him as a human being or a businessman. I'm just saying I just didn't understand why out of nowhere he dropped out. I was condescending in my tone, and I still to this day will be that way. I wished he would have pursued. I think I've always said if Jimmy Carter got elected to a second term, or if Ross Perot continued on his sense of mission, the world would be a different and possibly better place. But that's just me
Coach,
thinking.
I think the dropout part that you keep on referring to was him in 96. Because in 92, oh, he did. I mean, he was on the ballot election day. And as Saul has said, he got the highest percentage of a third party vote candidate in history. I mean, so he was significant. In other words, Bill Clinton won the election with less than 40% of the vote. Let's put that, okay. And so, or at, excuse me, 40, he was at 41% of the
Mhm.
vote. Yeah. So I'm just saying Ross Perot was significant, you know,
I think he
but he
was
did run. I think
extremely
he ran
significant.
again. I think he ran again in 96. I think he challenged again in 96 and then dropped out. I think that's what you remember. But
So I
we
mean,
I don't remember. Go ahead. Go ahead.
but just to bridge the gap, I think we're all together, Kevin, to make a joke because if you're from Florida, there's nothing closer than Oregon and Washington. So you can be kind of from rural Oregon. I can become from Seattle, and to somebody, from Florida, it's pretty much the same place. We practically live next
exactly
door.
next
And
door.
so, but I do think if there's a fun thing to talk about, it's these two mayors, and we already have 2 years into Ken Wilson, right? The mayor of Portland, who kind of
Yes,
promised a very specific set of solutions as an outsider independent Democratic candidate on homelessness. And then you have
right.
Katie Wilson, who I don't think she won as bold of a race. Like a lot of people are trying to make her Mondani West, but I think Bruce Harrell really ran one of the worst campaigns I've seen in a while. But like Katie Wilson is also kind of pitching this new, we call it democratic socialist. I wish it was more pro-growth socialist. We're gonna, better handle our misspending because that's Oregon. Has its own problems, but like Seattle's so much richer, and so we do everything you do times 10, and like we have $9 pizza, and like where Katie Wilson really lost me is she ran on like how are we going to make $9 pizza less, but she didn't have a solution. She's just like, oh, the pizza's so expensive. And it was just mind blowing for me because that was a riff off of Mondani's like, we are going to stop the slide of dollar pizza to $2 pizza. And like, my only joke is Seattle has pretty much done democratic socialist policies for almost 15 years. We invented them. And pizza has not gone down once over the last 15 years.
Yeah, this is as it relates to Katie Wilson, in my opinion, because of her background, because as an activist and a social justice warrior, I just think what she needs is right. She needs serious people to help her get some wins. I think Katie Wilson's success model is Michelle Wu, the mayor of Boston. And
Hmm.
if you look at Michelle Wu, first Asian American to win the mayor in Boston, but I think she's MIT or whatever, highly credentialed, so different in that way from Katie. But she's also a social justice warrior in terms of working policy for working class people. She was so successful by the policy she did in her first term. She got elected in 2021, right? That she ran unopposed in Boston. And for a major city like Boston, which is certainly as big as Seattle, right?
Yeah.
To run unopposed is unheard of, and that's how successful she was. And so she has programs like free routes for working class that working class people take in their mass transit system. She does also so she does a lot of things, and she has some wins under her belt. Yeah, yes, the criticism you point out, Coach, is absolutely right about her state of the city address is that she is policy light. So you could be a visionary, you could be someone whose heart is in the right place, but in order to be successful, now that she actually won the race, right? She has to have some wins, and that's why I want to come help her. We need to address
Oh,
the housing affordability. In it's in Seattle, it's worse than most of the country. Let's put it that way.
But
You
to
know.
be fair, we spend more than almost every state on pure play public housing. So we don't even do mixed use public private.
Mhm.
I know city officials who tell me the public housing we build doesn't pay property taxes because they're exempt. They're
Mhm.
putting addicts who've OD'd 5, 10 times into these units who then wreck them. And then after that, they kind of look at their hands and say, why are there still addicts outside? And I mean, Kevin, not to like get to the bottom of like the great mystery of the West Coast fentanyl addiction crisis, but it's definitely not just coming from LA, because why does Vancouver, BC have the cheapest fentanyl in all of North America? Why does
Mhm.
Seattle have the second cheapest? Why does Portland have the third cheapest? Right. And it kind
Yeah.
of creates this cascading statement of, I
Yeah.
think some of these social housing endeavors would work. And this kind of gets into what my quality of life coalition is, which are specifics. You know, one, you need a public camping ban with direction to shelter. Two, if you have 3 strikes, you OD multiple times, you rob multiple times, you're clearly an addict. We should use the criminal justice system to give you 6 months of rehab and then put you into public housing, then give you that optional rehab space. You know, I think we have to have some really hard questions about people. I call it a war on drugs that murder. If you have clean cocaine, send it to the West Wing. That's what helps those interns and Marco Rubio do all these things. But if your cocaine kills a kid, I really think that's pretty close to manslaughter, and you got to go to jail. And like different than the rehab, like this is, and it's like I think this is where the West Coast is kind of hoisted on its own petard, where we're so busy trying to beat each other at like being the most milk toast liberal perfect person that sometimes we lose our moral high ground. And you know, look what happened to Anakin Skywalker when he lost the high ground.
So
Well,
let me.
so, but hold, let me
Okay,
jump in, Coach.
go ahead, Kevin.
So I hear what you're saying, but okay, I was talking about affordable housing, and this is that part of the problem is where that conversation goes. The most intractable, broadest, costliest, complicated aspects of affordable housing is at the indigent level. Is homelessness and at that level. No, but we have a housing affordability crisis that is all the way up through the middle class of the country, right? Right, and it is causing working class folks who are not near homelessness, but they're getting there, right, to the point where they have food insecurity. So, in other words, the solves for the problem don't start at the worst cases. That's the
Oh,
hardest
I
place to.
completely agree
Yeah,
though, but that's
yeah,
where you see
okay,
this in Oregon, where I call it's housing, not homelessness. And I make this statement: 99% of housing is for somebody who's like just needs an apartment. Like that's what short room occupancy was. There's this maybe 1% of housing that is meant to help somebody who's homeless, who's an addict, who's struggling. And I think our politicians get obsessed. They try to make the 1% the 99. And the
yeah,
things that we need to do to increase housing supply, to get, I call it housing for your college kid, like to get more of that, or housing for me who just got dumped and was thrown out and like doesn't have a place to stay. That's different than how do you help somebody who's had 5 ODs. And I think
yes, that's
sometimes we get
exactly
caught,
right.
but do you kind of get what I mean? We're talking we homelessness is how do you help somebody who's dealing with addiction and mental illness get back on their feet and then later get into housing. Housing is how do we better affect public private investment to make what we need and what the market wants, to the point of like, this is my one dream, and this was Katie Wilson will win if she rezones, which she promised she would do. She said she would do this. So she said she would rezone the light rail stations to like 20 stories. It pulls at like 75%. I've talked to city council members that want to do it. I've talked to Katie Wilson advisors that want to do it. But they all just kind of go on this bureaucratic rigmarole and they're like, well, it's going to be so hard. And it's like, just do it. You're mayor. You control the council. You have this movement. You said you were going to do it. Please just do it. And like, she
So
might not.
So let me jump
I
in real quick because I
Yeah, for
want to
sure.
be. Let me jump in. So there's a couple of things I want to unpack here. I don't just want to keep passing over these important points you guys are making. So one thing is Kevin mentioned one of the great mayor success stories was in Boston. One of the great governor success stories was in Massachusetts. Mitt Romney was a great governor, and he was actually not great, but marginal at okay
He
marginal,
was
but at the
unique. He was
he
very
was
unique,
unique,
and he crossed
marginal,
the
but
aisle.
marginal's good now. Marginal's the high road now. So He created Obamacare, but then he had the balls to say, because he was running as, he ran as a liberal for senator. He ran against Ted Kennedy to the point where Ted Kennedy had to borrow $5 million against his own home to fend him off. He ran as a moderate as a governor, and then as a conservative as president. But in the meantime of all that switching gears faster than a Yamaha, he said Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, which he was actually essentially accused of being the father of, has only worked in Massachusetts. What works in all 50 states? That's my question. When we talk about homelessness, and Kevin gave, and that's where another thing I wanted to unpack real quick. When Kevin made the point that now middle class is facing homelessness, now we've got a bully pulpit. Now we don't just have poor people saying, I'm living my ass out on the street. Now we have middle class saying, I may be on the street in 2 weeks. So how do we get to the point where we fend up? And Kevin had a great resolution, a great proposal with investment bankers and a level of investing. So I want to get into all that, but I'm just unpacking some of the things we just went through. The two of you just incorporated into this conversation, which is just incredible.
Okay. The thing about it is, in order to innovate anything, right, you have to have a proof of concept level. And
Hmm.
and the only way the proof of concept level gets scaled beyond that is if it actually works. And
Hmm.
so when you look at the housing affordability crisis in America, it affects the different earning levels differently. Okay, so for the middle class of the country, they can't afford to buy a home anymore. Certainly, the middle class in Seattle cannot afford to buy a home, right? What that is doing though is that their higher income that used to be able to afford to buy a house that now rents is driving rents up to the point where lower income people who earn within 200% of the federal poverty level, which for a family of three is $55,000. So we're talking in the working class, right? Okay, the Urban Institute in their recent study said that 52% of people who earn within 200% of the federal poverty level are reporting food insecurity. And it's primarily because of rent inflation, not food inflation. And so it's worse in Seattle because of their cost structure. Go to downtown Seattle and you will see normal to have guards in the supermarket. I mean, that's where we are in one
Yeah,
of the richest
but
cities
this
in the
is
country.
important. They
Yeah.
spend 10% of businesses. So my family owns a burger business called Dick's Drive-Ins. We spend 10% of our revenue on private security because the police won't come in time. But if you present that with Seattle as one of the highest sales taxes in the country, what you have is a dereliction of duty of government. And I make the joke, like people want to say, get rid of the police. I mean, we kind of have. We have private militia in all of the West Coast at this point, and it's because we've left these addicts outside. And Kevin, I'm in full agreement with you, by the way. I think like you and I might have like differences in where we start, but I think we've lost track of building enough housing. We've lost track about getting people into rehab that need the time. We aren't having any clear rule of law. I make the joke in Seattle that they don't have turnstiles. I would love to have free light rail for everybody who's in need and turnstiles, just because turnstiles are an international way to tell somebody who doesn't speak English coming in on your airport to buy a damn ticket. And we get so cute and we've tried to make it about racism, and it's not. It's literally every other major city in America outside of LA has turnstiles, and it's just sometimes the far left is getting too cute to the point that they're leaving long-term addicts on the street, giving them free apartments and raising the cost of living without just like realizing you have to help somebody who's addicted to fentanyl with 6 months of fucking rehab. Sorry to swear. I just get
No,
intense
no.
about this.
Yeah. Again, Saul, you keep on going back to the addicts. That is a problem and an
They're
aspect.
driving the cost of
Most,
living.
yeah, but most of the security in Phoenix, in Seattle is not due to homelessness. Most in food places, it's people in apartments who are choosing to pay their rent and eat less. This is what the Urban Institute study is saying. No, no, no. It's 116 million Americans who earn within 200% of the federal poverty level. Most of them have jobs, are in apartments, and the problem is that they're paying 70% of their take home pay in rent, and what it's doing is affecting their ability to have enough money for food, and it's they who are stealing from the supermarkets.
I
It's
don't
not
think
just
so.
the
If you and I
homeless.
spend out, it's going to be a lot of addicts, Kevin. I spend a lot of time with the people on the street, and I've
We're
I've
talking
raised $50 million for family homelessness.
we're
I
talking
don't think it's
percentages.
I
The
don't
home.
think a majority of the people stealing in our grocery stores. I'm just going to disagree with you. They are not
Okay.
people who
Well,
are the housing lacking. Like they are people. Like I'll give you an example, and maybe this is just
you go
anecdotal,
ahead
but
and
like
read the Saul. This is
send it
not
Well,
to me.
let's
when it
have the
comes to
example. Let's have the
I'd
example
love to
first,
read
and then
whatever you send to me. I'd happily read it. I'm not going to reject that. I can't read it right now. I'm all I can tell you is in the International District of Seattle, there's a pretty heavy market of EBT card sales of homeless people to older Asian Americans, to the point that literally the head of the city council was aware of it, but they weren't able to they couldn't figure out what to do. They believe most of the drug market, which they won't get rid of either. Like we won't arrest the fentanyl dealers, we won't get the addicts into rehab, and so we have this awesome market which the older Asian people love, where they buy the EBT cards from the addicts. They're getting like lots of groceries, and the addicts can get cash for fentanyl. And like I'm not sure it's just as simple as just housing insecurity caused by us not building enough public housing to help the homeless people
I
is
didn't
why
suggest that at all.
people.
No, I
That's
didn't
all.
suggest that at all. But what I'm saying to you is, okay, well, okay, let's strip back the population distribution. Seattle pure is their population is between what 750,000 and 850,000.
Yeah,
Okay.
about 1.5
Of
million in the metro if you
in
include
the metro,
Tacoma.
that's exactly
Yeah.
right. What percentage of that do you think are the addicts that you keep on referring to? Because I can
I
tell you this
I
much,
believe it's
they
about
are small.
10,000 people.
10,000 people out of okay
But,
850,000.
but
What
they're
but okay,
taking up
hold it.
about 1 billion of dollars a
But
year.
hold but let me finish. Let's follow this through. What percentage of Seattle earns within 200% of the federal poverty level? Because I
Like
could tell you
above it.
it's
It's
huh?
probably extremely high. That
Yes.
earns
Okay.
above.
Okay.
I
Oh,
totally.
right.
But this goes to. But we
No,
don't
no. But
solve housing by building
I I
massive amounts of public
I
housing
I
for homeless
didn't I
people,
didn't suggest
and that's
that.
what Katie
What I,
Wilson's about to do. She's
no
going to
no
raise
no that
property
she needs
taxes,
some help.
build public
Yes.
housing. She's not going to board any units in the next
But
four
so
years, and
before
she's
you
going to be shocked she loses.
but you're not talking to Katie. You're talking to us right here. And I'm not
Totally.
proposing what Katie's doing. Katie needs the help because she's policy light. What I'm trying to say to you is that for us to get on the same page on some of the data, you're talking about like 30% of the Seattle population earns within 200% of the federal poverty level. And the latest Urban Institute study says 52% of them are reporting food insecurity. So when I tell you that they way outstrip the people who are homeless and on the street and who okay I'm just saying to you the economics suggests that the loss rate for grocery that has been going up since we came out of COVID is not being driven by the addicts. It's
I
they're
I
too small a portion of the population to explain the data. This is data
they are
driven. This is none of the
driving. I I think we're going to
I,
get
I'm not
caught on this. They are driving a large percentage. They are definitely driving a majority of the theft out of grocery stores. So if I go to a Lowe's, no one is robbing $500 bits from a Lowe's. I literally, the Lowe's across the street from where I lived, there was a guy who did it every day, and I can just go and watch
they
it like it's a show.
okay,
so
my point is
let
that
me
my
interject for
point.
a second.
Hold
Okay, go
on.
ahead. Go ahead.
My point, because this is so important. My point is not to dismiss the impact that homelessness and addicts have on theft in retail operations. My point is not to dismiss it. It's to put it is to put it within the context of the broader people who are now stealing, who historically did not steal. And if you read any of the data in the literature on national, grocery chain and their loss ratios and all this other stuff, it is not because of this persistent minority of
It's
folks, 2% of the population, right? Who or 1% of the population. It is
it,
because a third of the population is starting to experience food insecurity. Okay, I'm just saying. Okay, that's where the magnitude is, and it is economics. It is. We do not have a shortage of available housing in the United States. We have a shortage of access to housing in the United States. We have 120 million single family homes, and only 108
but
million of them are occupied.
this is important though. This is important because in Seattle, like this is like one of my most. I hope we can find a meeting on this because like this drives
Yeah.
me nuts. Like in Seattle, they have made it almost impossible to be a 1 to 3 unit landlord. So imagine my grandma has 4 rooms in her house. She would
Okay.
literally tell me over my dead body, Saul, will I rent out a room in that house? And maybe it's because my grandma just doesn't like people, right? But like they encourage all these ADUs, like these mother-in-law apartments, to be built in Seattle. I'll tell you, a majority of them, and this is probably similar in Portland, are available as Airbnbs. Many of them are available for 30-day rentals at the request of the owner. And it's because underneath Airbnb law, you can evict a bad tenant. But underneath the current laws that we put in place, it makes it really hard to be a mom and pop single owner operator landlord, to the point that there are almost none available in Seattle. Like the only way you can actually rent a home is with VRBO or Airbnb.
Yeah.
I've told this to politicians, and of course the classic far left mindset is, well, we should make Airbnb and VRBO illegal and charge them a fee. And I was like, you're just going to make it so none of those units are available.
Right.
And like the answer is you have to have some interest incentivizing these units to come back on board. Because I will tell you, if Katie Wilson gave a 10% reduction in property taxes for you proving that you had a person aged 20 to 35 who wasn't an addict, this isn't for homeless people, just like a regular fucking person in need, like she would get 10,000 units, man. I think almost every city could get those units back on
Yeah.
board.
Okay. So that we are on board with that rationale, Saul, because what that recognizes is the issue is not that we don't have the housing. And so the solution is not necessarily that we need to build, 100,000 units of affordable housing. No, we have the inventory in Seattle right now. First and foremost, it is an access issue. It's a regulatory issue. It is a taxation issue. We need to clear those barriers and stuff like that.
So did
Absolutely.
Saul just identify a way to clear some of the
Well,
barriers?
yes, he was absolutely. Yes, what he was referring to is a tremendous disincentive for people who have the space in their homes to make them available,
But
to
Saul
tenants.
said there are some
Right.
people that are adamantly opposed to the idea, but there are some people who love the idea. But then comes the notion that liberals, and I'm not just
It's
categorizing, but
it's
there is the
it's a
notion
liberal bias
it's a
that a bias
liberal
against the
bias. That
it's a
so
liberal
here's my
well.
question. Let me jump into
Well,
my
every
question.
ideology has a bias, and in this case, the liberals are biased against the private sector, for profit,
The big landlord.
the
It's
big
hard to see
landlord.
that, but like somebody with
Yes,
4 units versus somebody with 10 versus somebody with
yeah,
20 is different. And I think
yeah,
that's where I would say both sides struggle with this. Like Republicans only see small business when there's actually mega businesses. Democrats only see mom and pop landlords, and like no union has ever spent money poorly. And like, it's the great divide where I try to make it really about issues. And I want people to disagree with me. If you don't have to be with me public camping, you don't have to be with 3 strikes, you go to rehab. You don't want it, you don't have to be with me 20 stories you near the light rail. I really think you should be with me on the socialization of no cover show music, where we pay businesses $500 for every band that they have performing for free because that's fun. But
Let's get
like,
back to
you don't
fun.
have
Let's
to.
get back
Yeah,
to fun. What's wrong with fun? But let me ask this question. Let me just point out something historically. Historically, in the Washington Senate and Congress, there were guys like Joe Biden, Ted Kennedy, and who is the conservative? Joe Biden, um, Kennedy, not Jesus, not Ted Kennedy. Was it Ted Kennedy? Ted Kennedy. There was a sense of compromise in Washington. There was a sense of work together. There was a sense of the liberal and the conservatives meeting together. Then came the inflection. The inflection period was Obamacare, where liberals just got too much of a win. Now, can we get back to this idea that Saul's pointing out that we've got to get to some compromise? If just loosening up the regulation on Airbnbs, if it means really solving 10,000 units of the homeless problem,
I wouldn't loosen regulations on Airbnbs. That's not actually kind of what I'm talking about. I think you need
yeah.
to incentivize homeowners to stop having Airbnbs. But to do that, you need to trade and give them something in return, which I think is where, you know, this is where Trump's made deal making a bad thing, but politics there has to be deal making. We
Deal
got to cut
making.
a deal.
So
But
Saul, are
we're
you
done
talking?
right
Are
now.
you
Deal
talking about? But
making
hold
is
it, Coach.
done, right?
Let me ask Saul a question. So Saul, are you talking about the fact that they need to make the eviction rules in Seattle more friendly to these small?
Specifically for somebody who's just renting out of their home, mainly because I'll just go
Yeah,
by to why
yeah,
I've experienced this.
I
Like
hear you.
I'm just, this is anecdotal, right? And to your point of you have to test something to experience it. Like my
Yeah,
version of that, one of the reasons why I'm really into giving, let's say, private landowners or people with office buildings, even though we shouldn't build offices anymore because there's no point. But like if you're building 20 stories and it's a place where you could go 23, we should give you 23 because the landowner wants top floor stuff. That's what they can sell for high. But in return, they should give us bottom floor retail for groceries for very low cost, so that can help affect groceries being too expensive. They should do small business leases at a set rate, and they should give 3 stories of housing to a local family homeless provider or somebody who does, really low cost units. And now we kind of use private development dollars to build something. The only reason why I'm so in support of that is because Amazon did that with a group called Mary's Place in Seattle. And the only difference is the city didn't give them more up or any incentives. So we never got more of it. But like the solution was pretty cool. Like I can send you an article on it and you'd be like, oh, that's kind of interesting. There's some room there. And like it took my partner kicking me out, and I've been having to live month to month at Airbnbs, and I've discovered I can rent 3-bedroom houses for way below market rate in Seattle on Airbnb. And I've come to the conclusion it's because they can evict me if I overstay because I'm a hotel unit.
yes, yes. And so, okay, so then what would be your proposal of what the rules should be? Because yes, I agree that the tightness of the eviction rules obviously is a huge barrier to individual small 1 to 4 unit rental properties. That's what shifts them over into the Airbnbs. So what would be your rule? How would you cut the threshold
I
for
believe, and
evictions?
I've been playing with this a lot. And we also have a problem on the West Coast. We're running out of money because we don't fully admit it, but as you pass some of these high wealth taxes or you push some of the burden on it, people do look at the supply. And I have lots of friends moving to Florida to be with Coach Trippy and his better
Yeah,
tax
yeah.
status.
We have
Texas
a
and
And
great
Florida.
tax. Let
Yep.
me tell you, Florida's got a great tax plan, and they're literally
just
about
do it
to
as a Democrat and I'll
initiate.
love it.
Yeah.
And they're literally about to initiate no property tax with some stipulations. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not really against all this. I am a liberal, but there is some good in Florida. I always say life is easy in Florida, to paraphrase it. When I
Till the
think my
hurricane
parents,
hits.
I
Well,
mean, but here's my question. Let me just throw out my question. What Saul is saying, is it liberal overreach? Is it the whole one size fits all solution that isn't a one size fit all solution? Is it conservative overreach? Does it mean that the
Both.
private sector can solve everything? Cuz can it or can it not?
okay. The history of our politics has spun into the extremes, and we're just taking turns. We're just taking
I
turns.
love that
You
line,
know,
man.
you
That's
know,
so good.
and so so yes, overreach. I mean, what we're experiencing overreach now. We're experiencing overreach with Biden, who reversed Trump's immigration policy. That's okay if it had some effect. The problem is it opened the floodgates. So that's overreach, right? Obama overreached. We complained bitterly about Obama. We called him the exporter in chief because that was his version of overreach. So we keep on trading places in terms of who gets in and how far they go, and it's moving further and further from the middle, right? I think that needs. I don't know what the solve for that is. Okay,
Kevin,
but I think the establishment parties are owned by that overreaction. We are just dismantling what each other does, but it's having no long term positive effect on the country.
I'm really curious about your opinion. So I totally understand your national overreach and how that ping pongs. I would even say when we talk about who's responsible, and I used to have a radio show, and you'll really laugh. It makes sense why I got fired based on talking to me. But I was on conservative talk radio on 770 before Rush Limbaugh. My ratings were great. My whole thing was about like we're going to find the rational opposition to the Republicans that won't drop a woman's right to choose to allow real candidates to run in the city of Seattle. Because I did blame Republicans for constantly consistently like holding their party threshold and not letting a no man's land appear where they could actually run moderates in the city. So they abandoned cities, which is a bullshit thing to do because cities are awesome and like are special emeralds, and like you shouldn't abandon a city. And then Democrats took that abandonment and went too far, right? And so Democrats hold responsibility for going too far. Republicans hold responsibility for not participating in the battle and running candidates that those constituents could vote for. And what we've been left with is this like double uniparty where like I make the joke, Bob Ferguson, the governor of Washington, who I kind of like, he's smart, but like he literally has enacted the only free speech like infringement in all of America and most of the Western free world where you can't buy Facebook ads for political speech in Washington because he's sued the political, like the Instagram and Twitter so much. And so Bob has almost a complete control over messaging because he has more money than everybody else. He uses television, he has radio, he's the governor. Like he's really done some pretty fascist stuff. And then, but like he complains permanently about how Trump is running this uniparty. And it's like, Bob, you control 70% of the seats in the Senate and the House. And he's like, well, I just can't solve our free speech violations. And it's like, you could, man, you could let us run ads. And the only thing that will make Bob finally let the ads run is if I run for US Congress, run a lot of ads because it has a federal limitation. You can run as a federal candidate. And then the Democrats will be angry that I have so much voice. And then they'll make it legal again. So everyone has the voice. And it's just like, it's stupid.
I hear you. Well, this dysfunction at the national level leaves it to the local communities to come up with their solutions. The problem is it's impossible for a city to solve, for example, what is inherently a national problem. To the what is killing Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, and stuff like that is because they became magnet cities because they tried to help the homeless, right? Okay, this is why you can't solve that problem. Even if you had a program that would work, it would
They would
just
all go to
attract.
Portland. They would all
Yes,
go to Portland. The
that's
moment
what
I
I'm
pass
saying.
3 strikes, you go to 6 months in Washington. They just send in
Yeah,
Portland. But that's why this should be a U.S. Congress race. Like,
no,
not
we
to like,
need. It's a
I want
national
to run
problem.
against Pramila Jayapal as what I call a Cascade Democrat. She is a Democratic socialist. Like, what are they? They're both made up. Whatever. It's because legacy Democrats suck. But I won't think there should be the candidate from Seattle should be as focused on addiction and getting like I call it world's worth field trip. Like, take 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats to 1 week Portland, 1 week New Orleans, 1 week that bad area in Dallas, and like after every one, we'll sit in a hot tub and talk to each other about how messed America is. But like I don't know if Pramila should be representing Washington. Yes, she stops Trump, but we should have somebody who stops Trump and can talk about the addiction crisis without being embarrassed that Trump's going to like put egg on your face because you're like, yeah, we have an addiction crisis in Seattle. He's like, yeah, you do, and it's like, well, yeah, it's also in Portland, New Orleans, everywhere else, President. And what do you think about us doing a world's worth field trip together?
to see where the problem is. Well, okay. I just wish, okay. The problem with these conversations is that the weeds get so thick so fast. Okay.
Mm.
If we could pull back the lens of this conversation from the various detailed talking points and just look at some factors, some macroeconomic factors that could lend some clarity to what maybe we can do. Like, for example, where's all the money? Where's all the money? Okay, right. Because right, Seattle is a wealthy city, absolutely, because they have a high concentration of some of the wealthiest people in the country in Seattle, right?
We send more
And we
money to
have
the federal government than I think any other
yeah,
city except one.
yeah, but
New York, right?
which is a sink and a filter for the extreme wealthy, because once again, the federal what the money is not in the federal government, right? We right now we have what $39 trillion in federal debt, right? We and 35 trillion of that federal debt was added since 1992 when Bill Clinton took his office. Okay, so 216 years of American history, we had $4 trillion worth of debt. You know, we're at 34 years and we put $35 trillion worth of debt. Look at the entire American landscape. That $34 trillion is excess government spending over what they take in on taxes. That's why it's debt, right? Okay. So that means it went to the private sector. There's only 2 sectors. Okay. Okay. You look at the entire American landscape. That 34 trillion didn't go into American infrastructure. Our infrastructure is rated D minus. All the way. Okay, it did not go into American health. It did not go into American education. If you look at the socioeconomic data for across the strata of America, right? U.S. Department of Labor statistics show from 1980 on, right, that all the income from the GDP growth in the country in that whole period of time went to the top 2% earners. Okay. What we have done is created the wealthiest billionaire class ever. I mean, a magnitude that if people have lost sight of the fact
It's
that
significant.
that Elon Musk has more income than the entire Gilded Age of the 1800s, adjusted for inflation. I'm talking the Rockefellers, the Mellons, all of that. Okay, yeah, and this is a new phenomenon. This wasn't the case. Mitt Romney is extremely wealthy. I mean, he's micro
Seattle
compared to
holds
these big.
10% of the Fortune 500's entire wealth
Yeah,
quotient. The city of Seattle, which you said was 750,000 people, 1.5 metro,
yeah.
holds 10% of the entire Fortune 500's wealth quotient. That's pretty wild.
It's
That's
pretty much
crazy,
okay.
right?
So the point is the money has been consolidated in private sector hands at the top 0.0001 space. That's where the money is, right? Again, so
Would this
that's
current
one thing.
public sector, when they got the money back, actually lower the debt, or would they start new programs?
Well, okay, Clinton did lower the debt in the 90s. I mean, in other words, he raised
I'm
taxes
not sure AOC is Clinton.
no, 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 no. Okay, it's one solution, and I'm not saying we need to replicate what Clinton did in the 90s. My point being is that all the money has been drained out of extreme wealth looted the treasury. All the money has drained out of the government and is in the hands of private sector holders, very few of them. They have the money. Okay, now let's look at the physical assets. The physical assets, right? Whether you're talking about housing, as I told you, whether you're talking about available healthcare, whether you're talking about food, we throw out more food. We lose more food in the 2,000 miles that the average American plate has to travel to get to your plate. We lose more food than that than would feed the homeless. We do not feed the hungry. We do not have a resource shortage on all the things you need to survive in America. What we have is an access problem, right? In other words, people can't afford to access it. They used to be able to afford to access it, right? Okay,
And a
so
use of resources problem. I will go back to, if I gave the Seattle government doubled their homelessness budget, I think we would have doubled the homeless people in 4 years if they continued the same plan, which they've done for the last 12 years, which they've doubled the money every. Do
yeah,
you kind of get
because
what
you
I mean?
can't solve that problem.
Absolutely.
You cannot solve a national problem, locally
But you got
because
to
you're
try to come up with
solved.
solutions locally. Seattle shouldn't just
No,
abandon solving it and do a shitty
uh,
job just because the
no,
federal government exists.
hey, well, okay, okay, you just got to understand where you are. In my opinion, okay, if you can't solve the problem, if you cannot solve the problem, throwing more money at it is not going to make it better.
So
It
let
may
me
make you feel better, but it's all it's doing is, I mean, you're still losing space. I mean, that's what I'm saying. So right, it is a national problem, and if the nation won't solve it, then yes, stop being a magnet. I mean, I'm sorry. Do yes, Giuliani in the 90s in New York, right? Yeah, he shipped them all over the place. He was Texas before Texas was Texas. Yes, right. Okay. I'm not saying we have to be cruel. I'm not saying we have to be cruel, but stop being a magnet. You only make you stop digging. People
let
are
me
coming in from Idaho, Montana, the Dakotas. They're coming in from Chicago, because it's so friendly. No, stop. That's not helping. You have to use your power to force the federal government to do their damn job, right? This is a national problem. The drug problem has to do what has happened to mental health and access to quality health amongst the 330 million Americans. Okay, we have a drug problem. Yes, we have a treatment problem. We have an access to healthcare problem. We have
An access to housing problem. We have a lot of
access to
problems.
housing.
we've got a
That's what
lot
I'm
of
saying.
problems.
So what we have to
That's why I
do
call it a
is
quality of life
recognize,
coalition, though, because it is a quality of life problem. Like when you summarize
yeah,
all of this together, that's,
yeah,
I think, what we're facing over the next decade and what's going to define politics is people that can solve quality of life problems, come up with, test cases in Seattle's, in San Francisco's, in LA's, and then bring it to the federal level. And that's how you beat JD Vance. You can't beat JD Vance by leaving the problem as it is, allowing you to come do a tour down Venice Avenue and just being like, well, Gavin's busy fighting Trump.
So
okay.
let me
I
make
got
a
an
point
idea.
here.
I got a
Let
solution
me.
for you, Saul, that
Oh
I've been
yeah.
pitching to Katie Wilson's team, at heart. But I'm in Vancouver, which is on the southern end of the state. Now, I'm in Vancouver, Washington, across from Portland, right? But
Oh, you
still,
got the best of
and
both
here,
worlds. No
yeah.
income tax and no sales tax.
There you go. That's why Vancouver is the place to be. But okay, so much cheaper than Seattle. But here's the thing. Okay, it's called the price gap agreement. Price gap agreement. It does. Okay, what it does is it's a financial instrument actually there's another financial instrument called the home equity agreement. It's a payday loan on your house. How about that? That the hedge funds created to absolutely rape, people who get laid off on Silicon Valley, right? Whose credit got destroyed because they can't replace their income. And yet, so they didn't, and they need something to live on. The home equity agreement, that's what that is. I won't get into the details, but the hedge funds made so much money on it. They did $1 billion worth of that business in 2024 that they
Mm.
got it legalized in 32 states, including the state of Washington. So you take the same financial instrument, the home equity agreement, and you reprice it for affordability. You take out the usury part of it, the payday loan rates of return on it, right? And what you install is this. There is a class of impact investor who is willing to accept a lower than market return on investment in order to achieve a sustainability goal, renewable energy, climate tech, whatever, or a social inequality goal, the bridging wealth and income inequality. This that impact investor invests their money in what's called the sustainable debt market. Okay, it is managed by Wall Street. Most of the commercial banks' capital desks are involved in designing the instruments. But the point is that impact investors invested and funded $1.74 trillion in 2024, lower than market returns to achieve a social goal or a sustainable goal. So I'm saying I created something called the price gap agreement, which is the home equity agreement, but it's going to be priced lower than market return. Okay, it's going to be priced for affordability and get impact investors because they have all the money. I mean, like I said, all the money is in the hands of these wealthy folks. Okay, who are willing to accept a low market return. All right, if they covered the gap between what a credit qualified, income verified, middle class household in Seattle, right? Thousands of them, right? Okay. The gap between what the cost of a house is and what they can actually get approved, a mortgage they could approve on based on their income level, right? Okay. If the impact investor will cover that as a silent second, and accept the IRS break even rate as the interest on that silent second. The IRS break even rate means that you don't have to pay subsidies, no tax implications. It's between 4% and 4.9%, depending on how long the loan is outstanding. Okay. So this impact investor is going to take 4% interest, let's say 4.5% interest on a second position loan that covers the gap. Let's use an example, an $800,000 house, in
I want to
Seattle.
buy an $800,000 house. I need $200,000 down. My family doesn't like me anymore, so they won't cover my 200,000. I qualify. I maybe have 75,000 or 100,000. Would this organization like own 45%
No,
of my house
no.
or something? No,
Here, here's the
I'm just
here.
more trying to learn about it. I'm not
No,
trying
no,
to be
that's
critical at
right. So
all.
here's the thing. Okay, so let's say again, we're talking about the median income in Seattle is between 88,000 and like 170,000, right? This is the middle class in Seattle.
Mhm.
Okay, they can't afford to buy a house in Seattle. That group. Okay, so let's say you could afford what you can at 6%, 30 years fixed, right? You could afford a mortgage you could afford a $600,000 mortgage, right? Because that's what you could credit qualify, full income, conforming mortgage market, right? So this is the quality credit part of the market, right? You could do a $600,000 mortgage, but the house costs $800,000. What I propose is that the impact investor covers that $200,000, but we're going to tack another $35,000 onto that. Why? Because we're going to change out the heating and AC and put high energy efficient heat pump, water heat pump, and we're going to slap the solar panels on it to make the house green certified renewable energy. Okay, so that's $235,000 that an impact investor puts in. You come to the table with your 3% down like it's an FHA loan, right? You get your $600,000 mortgage. That's the only thing you're paying on is your $600,000 mortgage. You have to refinance the house no later than 10 years. So you have up to 10 years to refinance the house. The $235,000 is earning between 4 and 4.9% interest every year. It's just accruing. You don't pay it, right? And when you refinance the house, the interest rate is set based on how long it took you to decide to refinance it. Okay, right. So patient investor, what the investor is doing is transferring wealth to the middle class family, saying, okay, I'm going to help you buy a house that you can't afford. This house is now going to be green certified, sustainable, and you're buying a house that you can't afford, right? So that's social justice inequality, right? We could take, we could do a 3% participation fee for making that transaction available, which doesn't exist, right? And the seller who's getting market price for their house pays 1 point. The buyer who's getting an $800,000 green certified house for a $600,000 mortgage is paying 1 point. And the real estate agents who are getting a transaction that they wouldn't get are splitting a point between the two of them. So instead of getting the 4 points they normally get, they get 3 points, right? Okay, that's 3 points on an $800,000 transaction, $24,000. Okay, you take that $24,000 and the rental property that the middle class family is vacating, you're going to subsidize that rent by paying $1,000 a month for 24 months. And you're going to put pressure, public pressure, on the landlord of that rental property to ask them to match the subsidy at least 50%. If they do, the $3,000 rent that the middle class family was paying would be a $1,500 rent for a person earning 200% of the federal poverty level. They could afford that for the quality apartment that the middle class family had. So an impact investor helps a middle class family buy a sustainable, affordable home. And the middle class family helps a working class family rent a middle class quality apartment for something that a working class person can afford, right?
But not
Okay.
just that. What if we
And guess
incorporate?
what? No city guarantee, no city credit improvement, no city money. It's coming from the impact investor, and it's going to go through this, and it's going to be raised through the
I don't
sustainable
think
debt
there's a
market.
level of trust in Seattle between Katie Wilson's administration and the people that you think would be impact investors to do this based on my
Oh, because
perspective.
yes,
I
because if
think
this
I think all of them are already leaving, and not to like make you super depressed, like your pitch, I hear it and I understand it. I think there's a way with the right person in power, you create that. I heard this, I went
it
to this mega yacht real estate pitch that almost made me cry last night. And like literally this guy's yacht is paid for because he buys like some state level federal low income, he buys low income housing that states build, but they're only given loans to build 10 years and they need to do it for 15. They all want to sell by year 9. He buys them out, immediately transitions them to Section 8 housing, which increases the take home by their business by like 400 to 500 per unit. And like literally the guy was bragging about how they found this building in San Diego that had 100 units and like 10 of them were 4 bedrooms and those were at 2,000 and we've gotten them to 5,000 in less than 3 months. And he's like, best part is the federal government covers all of it and like we don't have any risk. And then he went one further, and this is where like the room, he actually lost the room. He went too hard, like it was too sharky. But he's like, and we can even get a charity locally to own like 0.1%, and then we don't even pay property taxes. So who doesn't fucking
yeah,
love
this is
that?
it's
And
is
I mean, that
is
just sounded,
that
all I wanted to make that illegal. Like all I thought as I heard his shit was like, we gotta get
yeah,
to
this is the
Congress and make
problem.
that
This is
illegal.
oh yeah, this is absolutely the problem with
So
the
that's
country.
the
But let's not lose the thread. Okay, there is no doubt that Katie Wilson, wealthy people should be scared of Katie Wilson. We have given them a 50-year regressive taxation run.
If she doesn't
Okay,
use the
remember
money
Reagan?
well.
Reagan promised
But if you
trickle
don't use the
down
money well, you're
economics.
not. It's not impressive to just take more money and waste it.
Well, all
No,
I'm
it's
saying
not.
here,
But we've got.
well,
Go ahead.
all I'm saying here is that yes, I understand that they're worried that she's going to take more money. She's going to be they from their perspective, she's going to be punitive. But the backdrop context is that their tax burden has been dramatically decreased over the last 50 years. And the fact it is a problem,
The
right?
tax
But
burden in
okay.
Washington has actually dramatically increased over the last 20 years, and we've almost
Oh,
doubled our state
okay.
budget over the last decade, which is significant. Taxes have
Yes.
gone
Well,
up significantly, and businesses are
that's a
leaving at a
shift
significant rate.
that is a shifting because of the absolute degrading of federal tax burden. Okay, so that you're right. I mean, I'm not saying that some states haven't replaced it with okay, but I'm saying the overall tax that wealthy people pay is considerably less than what they paid in 1980 and 1990. Okay, so all I'm point is her point is well taken that she probably is coming after them to some extent, and I understand as you said they don't trust her. They're like, oh, okay, now she did win this
I'm not an
election.
extremely wealthy person. I don't trust her. She has no money she can take from me. I
Oh,
literally am
oh,
telling you very
oh,
honestly, based on what I've seen, the people around her, I don't trust that when she increases taxes on a business community that's fleeing Seattle, at worst case to Bellevue, most often to Idaho, Florida, or Texas, I don't think she's going to create more tax revenue. And we've been seeing it in
oh,
King County. They've been raising taxes for the last 3 years and producing less tax revenue.
but Saul, this is what I mean. We're not talking about her raising taxes. This idea is a public-private partnership. And what I'm saying to you, and we have done this before, the SBA 504 program is a federal guaranteed loan program that allows small businesses who don't qualify for conventional financing to buy their real estate with a government guarantee that Wall Street then funds. So it works. And the investors have never lost on the SBA 504 program, right? In other words, the draw of the guarantee. What I'm trying to say here is that for Katie Wilson to say, yeah, I'm a social justice warrior. Yes, I'm going to have to raise taxes. I feel like I have to raise taxes where I need to raise taxes. For her to participate in saying to the wealthy of Seattle, right, who recognize we have a housing affordability crisis in Seattle, in the country, but it's worse in Seattle, right? Right. Here's an opportunity. Since you put your money in the sustainable debt market, this is going to be funded by a dual social and sustainability bond from the sustainable debt market. Fund this bond so that we can make 9,500 homes, 9,500 homes a year in
Microsoft
Seattle.
already did
Of
it, and they just didn't do it in Seattle. They spent $100 million giving low interest loans to people building middle class housing. They built the 10,000 units. Seattle wouldn't agree to work with them on that.
well, no. Well, it's look, yeah, I'm talking about in Seattle. I'm not talking about in the suburbs. I'm saying this is the city of Seattle making a deal with the wealth of Seattle, saying, hey, okay, we as a city can stand by this idea of creating, if you will invest in this bond, it's not going to the city coffers. The money is going directly to purchase a market home, a home at market price for a credit qualified, income verified middle class family, right? They are getting the benefit because they get to buy a house that they couldn't afford. You are achieving a social goal by allowing them to afford that house. You are achieving a sustainable goal by converting the house to renewable energy, right? We need to do this. They know we need to do this. So you achieve both your goals that the whole sustainable debt market is designed for. You get your nominal return on the investment, which is what they do in the sustainable debt market. You can make the investment evergreen by when they refinance, you just take your interest and let your principal roll into another price gap agreement. So that if you're a foundation or a charity and you want a perpetual gift, there it is, right? All those things. All you have to do is volunteer to do it. I'm not going to come take it. And guess what? None of the money goes to the city. It passes right to buying the house. It will unfreeze I swear, you have
I
what,
think if the city put up a
four
$10
thousand?
million match, you could do it.
No,
You and me are, you,
they don't need to put up a
they
match.
don't,
No.
you don't believe me, Kevin. There's no trust. You don't,
So
this will not
Eh,
accomplish what you think. I think you should do it. I think it's a great idea. I think with a different mayor that would give anything back that wasn't just take, you could accomplish it. I think you should try. Like, I'm not
all I can
rejecting.
say is is that it is simple. It's a silent second. Everyone will understand the facility. There is nothing. The only thing the city is doing would be to administer it, to facilitate, how title handles it, to facilitate, the lenders who are going to provide the mortgages for the home
I hear
buyers,
you.
to facilitate the rent subsidies that are going to come from the fees, right? That's all the city is going to do. And it could be done in a very automated way with minimum FTEs for the city. But the money, there is no overhead charge for that investment. In other words, if they, to the extent, if it would take a bond of $2.7 billion would allow 9,500 credit qualified, income verified, middle class households in Seattle to buy a house in Seattle that would be made available if someone could afford to buy them. Your actual residential real estate market right now, seriously, if you have 4,000 sales, that would be shocking. It's frozen.
Mhm.
Redfin did a national survey of active real estate agents, and 71% of them did not have one sale this past year. The
Eh,
housing market is frozen because no one can
Kevin,
afford to buy a house, and those who can afford it won't buy it at this price.
I am not an
You
expert
have
at
to
housing.
unfreeze it.
I've never owned a house. Like, I'm fully admitted. Like, so much of my anger comes from like I never think I'm going to own a house. I'm from a really rich family. Never going to own a house. Like, but like I hear you. I hear your perspective. All I can tell you is like I'm not smart enough. Like, this is why if I'm ever a politician, like I'm going to be about all partnerships and bringing people together. I know the president of YPN for Miami, which is like they have more realtors on God, and like none of them sell houses, so they're all
Yeah.
poser realtors. I know the president of YPN for Seattle, like Cheyenne Gouhuli. If you this I don't think should be a podcast, but I think if we wanted to like get you on with both of them, that's how if I was an imaginary politician, I would try to connect you with the people who have that influence that could help build it. I still go to there's this lack of trust between the government, and the government should throw some skin in the
And
game.
and
I
and
get
and
you don't believe you need it, but I just think that would get the dollars. Like it would bring a tiny
I
bit of faith.
all I could say is all I could say is the government has earned that lack of trust. The
so hang
government
on,
has
guys.
earned that lack of trust. And
Let me cut in at some
the
point.
only way to rebuild that trust, seriously, is coming up with a program that the private sector can see and understand that makes sense.
I
Anyone who
agree.
looks at the modeling of what I'm describing will see that this is Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac conforming mortgage credit quality that we're talking about, lowest default rate in lending. Okay, that's those families where that's one thing. This is Seattle real estate collateral secured. So we're talking premium real estate. Okay,
Yeah.
that's another thing. And we're talking about sustainability. Okay, there is no tricks in this. And
Okay,
if you're saying that all the money is going to go to buy the home, there's not going to be an overhead filter scraping it out for the city. I'm telling you, private sector people who have money, who invest in the sustainable debt market, will trust that. It is the fact that if the city had to get involved, in other words, if the city had to hold the money, if the city had to have a new agency to admit, no, yeah, you're right. There's no trust for that. There's
all
no
right,
trust.
guys, hang
And
on. Pause.
yes, go
Time
ahead,
out. Let
coach.
me jump in. Let's take Kevin's idea combined with Saul's idea. Kevin, you have
I'm a big
a
supporter of Saul's idea. Yes,
you
that we
have a
need to.
newlywed couple enabled to buy an $800,000 home. A
Oh,
pretty well. Wait, let's not throw the $800,000 figure out there. It is Seattle though, so it's not unusual. You empower with social investors, with charitable investors. You empower them to buy this home. Then you take Saul's idea and you say part of the requirement is 50% of the home
Mm.
has to be rented out to people in
no,
need.
no, 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 no.
Well, hang on. Let's just,
No,
it's a
no.
hypothetical scenario. Hypothetical,
It's two different
hypothetical.
problems. You don't want to
Right, it's two
combine these
different problems. Just take
ideas.
a hypothetical scenario. I'm just making a point here. I'm arriving at a landing here. Then comes the distrust. Then comes the whole idea the sharks are revered. Like Saul said, he was in a seminar where this shark was being revered until he went too far, too hard. right? But sharks are revered. The businessmen, the strong businessmen say we could get $1 million return if we finagle this new government program. How do we fix that? How do we? And then Saul even made the point, I'm not smart enough to know all the ins and outs of this contractual agreement. Not that he didn't say that, but there's so many
A little bit.
complexities. There's so
Well,
many complexities that how do we fix disabling? How do we really have a success story out of this? And
okay.
how do we not
Yes, we have.
have a
Well,
sham out of this?
Coach, okay, Saul's idea, if I understand it correctly, right, is that for small, for how owners of housing that are small, that would be small rental properties.
They're
Let's
not
say
incentivized to do that.
yeah, 4 units or less. What? Well, no, no. We have a problem that we need solving. We need to have a carve out of the eviction rules, right? That say, because we're talking about a circumstance where a person who doesn't have a lot of inventory, they
They own
can't
one
carry,
house. They have 3
right, they
rooms in
own
it.
one house. They can't afford someone can't, it's not paying their rent. And it's going to take them a year to evict them or something ridiculous like that. No, no, we have to make sense. In other words, they will make the
Sure.
inventory available, but if the person that can't pay the house, then they need to be able to leave and protecting them,
And that's
forcing
where
them.
liberals go too
That,
far. Is no one gets
that's where they go
evicted,
too
no
far. So no,
evictions.
so we need to have a carve out with a rule that makes sense for the smaller inventory, the inventory of 1 to 4 units
To incentivize
of
them to re-enter the
to
market.
ins and it's absolutely, and we should do that today, right? That is one part of the problem, right? Absolutely. The other part of the problem is rent inflation is driven by the highest income people who have to rent. The problem is since we came out of COVID in 2024, 2021, right? The escalation in house prices have finally priced out the American middle class. Never in US history was the middle class unable to afford to buy a house. In 1970, the working class was able to afford to buy a house. Now the middle class can't afford to buy a house. Okay, and they have priced out the working class to the point where they're eating less in order to pay their rent. This is and we're talking about
But like Saul
116
said, we're
million
not
people
even
is in this category. I mean,
that's
this is a
not even the
major part.
crux of the homeless problem. Yes, you're right. There are
No, no,
people who
that's
are
another
choosing.
problem. I don't want to talk about the homeless problem. This is what
We're
I'm
talking about
saying.
housing, not homelessness. And that's where Kevin and I think have a
Right.
lot of
Okay.
agreement.
And
We
I'm
just center
saying
in how do we increase housing supply, increase regular people buying houses more affordably. Like let's because the
if
addicts are the addicts. They're their own little group.
no, no, that's a major problem. That's another intractable problem. But when you're talking about a multi-trillion-dollar problem, I mean, housing is Fannie and Freddie Mae is $7 trillion. Okay, okay, so right, that's the conforming market.
Let me
Okay,
let Saul finish up because he's
when
got
you're
to wrap it
talking
up in
about,
10 minutes. Let me let
I
Saul
know, I
finish
know,
up.
but let me just finish what I'm about to say. If how we could solve something, get something moving, is take the best credit qualified folks, have wealthy people invest in them, right? Because they are low risk, right? The middle class is priced out, right? That creates transactions that would not exist. People will sell houses
No,
if
I
they could get
understand the
market price for
benefit,
it.
and I
Right.
want to see.
Okay.
Let me let
And
let
then
me.
I
well
think it's a
that's
good idea, Kevin. I
uh,
agree with you. If I was in a position of power, I would try to bridge the public market and the private market to make what you're
that's the
doing
only
work.
way we solve it.
I think if we want to have like a big aha of why we're all so frustrated, because I'm like a lost conservative talk radio show host who's about to run as a Democrat against Pramila Jayapal, the most far left leaning person in Congress, right? It's that we don't have trust that either the far right or the far left can participate in the public private partnership that's needed to solve the quality of life crisis that is experienced in almost every major city in America. Even Miami is dealing with homeless people outside,
Yeah.
addicts that I'm starting to see more than
Yes.
ever. Like
Absolutely.
and we've cutting property taxes and we've made it more affordable. And it's like this weird other shadow side to Seattle, which has spent more money than anywhere, which has like made it really easy for homeless people outside. And we're seeing the same things. And I'll end with the final joke. The reason why I'd take Seattle and Portland's problem over Miami's and Orlando's, and I don't mean this in a rude way, Coach Trippy, because your weather is perfect, your environment is amazing, but none of you guys can afford insurance because you have this disaster thing from climate.
Yes, it's all going to it's all going to be stranded assets in
But
10
then in
years.
Portland and Seattle, like you know this too, Kevin, you can't get insurance for petty property crime and theft because there's just going to be another person who's had a bad trip who will break your window. My only joke is, and I think you agree with me, Kevin, that's why we live in the PNW versus Florida. We can always visit, but it's easier to solve that addiction crisis than it is to stop hurricanes from happening.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And that's the one thing we got on Coach Trippy. He has got great weather, and we got some big problems, but our problems are actually freaking simpler. They seem way more complicated.
Our assets are not going to be stranded. That's exactly right.
Can't all our problems be solved on a in a sense, on a public-private sector solution? Isn't there a way for enough profiteering?
That's why I'm a pro-growth socialist.
Right, the pro-growth socialist. That's exactly. I say I'm a capitalist, but I'm also believing in championing the vulnerable. Is there profit in championing the vulnerable? I'm not opposed to saying I would love to drive a Ferrari. I may never, but I'm not opposed to the idea. I mean, is there a solution? Is there a balance? That's what I'm trying to find in the whole political no-brainer podcast and the whole Chair Across the Aisle podcast. Is there a connection between the capitalist and the socialist?
It's the pro-growth socialist. Every capitalist is a pro-growth socialist, actually, even Trump. And I'd say where you have to find an enemy in politics, or the one that you're fighting against. It's the far right that doesn't really believe in the economy, and the far left that doesn't believe in the public-private partnership. And we have to build this bridge, almost like Spider-Man, between the moderate right and the moderate left to rebuild this, what I call the quality of life coalition, or what Kevin might just call rational politics, or I don't know. Sorry to cut you off.
No, not at all. You didn't cut me off. When you say that, even Trump is a capitalist.
Like 10% of IBM, man, or Intel, or whatever.
But his dad was making money on low rental properties. That's how the whole Trump phenomenon started. Was on low income rentals.
It can get you a super yacht based on what I learned last night. Jesus.
And then the guy just went too hard. Even the conservatives who say liquidation's an artery, a free enterprise, he went too hard for them. He was like, "Oh, we can get a charity in here, and we can create a charity,
and we'll just be like, it's a total fake.
We won't even have to pay taxes.
Yeah, we don't have to give them even one rental unit.
Guys, you guys are going down this road, but let me ask you a question, and it's a serious and it's an overarching question. I mean, what is your sense of the direction of the economics of the country? What is your sense? I mean, do you have a sense of urgency that we're teetering on the edge of things, or do you think that this is going to be we'll turn a corner and it'll just be fine and things are just going to go on?
Saul, do you want to answer it first? Because I know you said you had to get soon.
Yeah, I'll answer it, and then maybe you guys can give me an honorary discharge from this, and you guys can keep going deep. I think we are. It's why I want to run for U.S. Congress, specifically against Jayapal. I think we need D on D crime. We need Republican on Republican crime. We need to realize that the two big parties have so gerrymandered debate that we actually need to create conflict within the parties, which Trump actually did some really interesting things to the Republicans by doing that. AOC, by running as a Democratic Socialist, created far more change, and maybe we need that back to the middle. But I think we are in a crisis. I think there is a quality of life, just cost of living crisis. It's being driven by an inability to get addicts into rehab. It's driven by an inability to get people to be able to buy homes. We're not, incentivizing builders to create rent to own properties. We could help them do that. We're not getting these units that have been locked up back available. It's a lot of we're not doings, and all I can say is something's got to give, or to a degree we may witness that is this dissolution of America. The only thing that the Romans on the far edges of the Roman Empire realized when the Roman Empire had ended, that no one was filling the potholes, and they had to do it themselves. I mean, and Seattle's given so much money to the federal government, not getting back, and we're not filling our potholes. What's to present, worst case scenario, but if Trump runs for a third term, whoever's representing Seattle, whether it's Pramila Jayapal or Saul Spady, we should threaten to secede. Because why should Washington stay a part of this sham system when we have nukes, and we have Boeing, and we have Starlink and OpenAI? And why should we stay a part of this? We should make ourselves kind of like Texas in the pre-Civil War, and we should say, is it Oregon with us? Is it California, Washington, Oregon? Or are we going to join Canada? But you need to threaten Trump with secession if he runs for a third term, and that shows you that has nothing to do with the debt. That just has to do with fascism. So yeah,
So
I'm super worried.
So to Saul's point, I'm super worried. But what I'm worried about is what we've said before earlier on in the podcast. This pendulum swings both ways. If we go from the Trump agenda of turning the New Deal into the Screw Deal, and we go right back to and we go right back to increasing the New Deal to all types of new increases and all types of new programs. We've just shocked the economy in the last 4 years tremendously. We're going to wind up in significant debt if Democrats take office and they go on their progressive agenda of everything free from college to healthcare to food to housing. I don't think America can afford it. I think at some point within this next 2 years, we've got to come to a realization that we've got to come to a compromise. And if I don't think he can threaten to run for a third term, he can run for a third term. I don't think it'll be allowed. But frankly, it's not. If we continue on this Trump crazy train, it's better than switching back to a whole AOC crazy train because it's just going to be too hard to shock one extreme to the other.
Well, I mean, it's interesting where you all took this, but I am also worried. But my worry is much more practical than that. America has approximately 500 million weapons in
Mm,
America, right? And when you look at the demographics of the country, about 68% of America is white, right? So this is the biggest demographic. Blacks are 11%, Hispanics are like 14, 15%, Asians are like 3 to 4%, okay? Native Americans 1%, things like that, right? So it's this is primarily still two-thirds of the country is white. And you are talking about a hyper impoverished white working class. Okay,
mm.
who do you think owns most of these 500 million weapons? This is not the hood. This is not homes down in the barrio in LA. This is Bubba in a pickup truck who's always been able to work and take care of themselves and their family, who now is facing homelessness because they can't, the economics is so bad that they are eating less in order to pay rent. They can't afford to buy a house. They can't access the American dream. And what I'm saying to you here is Americans are not going down that way. We are a tinderbox. It won't take much if and here's the thing that I say to wealthy people. I mean, wealthy people are always the last to know, last to know before they go to the guillotine. Okay? If you are counting on law enforcement and the military to protect you from the rabble who's coming up the hill because they can't take care of themselves and their family, look very closely at your security forces. They are the same people, the working class, the middle class. And if their families and their friends and people who look like them and people who are in the same category, same situation, are coming up the hill because we have denied them any opportunity to take care of themselves and their family, they are not going to put them down to protect the wealthy person who has more money than they know what to do with. And the reason why the people are coming up the hill is because they have all the money. No, this is what happens. So if the money in the country is in the wealth, and if you don't fix the problem your greed has caused, right, you are going, the billionaires are going to be in the bunker, and when everyone comes up the hill, you're still going to be around.
Yeah, but I worry
This is
about the
19.
millionaires in Seattle that don't think of themselves as rich. And in a
And
purge-like scenario, they're going to be more the victim than they think. And like after you eat the rich,
yes, that
who is
that's
going to be eaten is all I want to say. And
no,
it's going to be the middle
it's
class.
no, we're talking no. This is Mad Max and Thunderdome. This is the law. This is the loss of social order. We, unlike any other country in the world, we're talking about a country of people who are entitled, who feel like they've always been able to. This is America, by the way, right? This is big patriotic American flags and stuff like that driving the dually. Yes,
But
they
you're
are
you're
not going down
describing
that way.
rural Oregon. All I can tell you, Kevin, and there's a little of
I'm
this in Portland,
describing all across this
rural America.
country.
But there's a lot of this in Seattle that you're maybe not as familiar with. Like literally, Seattle's bought more guns than almost anywhere else in America the last 8 years.
I
People
can,
drive around with their bumper stickers that say "Armed and Dangerous Left." Like
yes.
it's just it's
No,
not
it's
all
not
just
left and
one
right.
group. That's
It's
all. Just
all
yeah,
Americans.
it's
Yes, it's.
this
I'm not
weird.
saying it's.
We are
I'm not
yeah.
saying it's conservatives. You're right. You're right. I'm not saying it's not left or right. It is if the working class. As I said, it's 116 million Americans who fall in the category of earning 200% or below of the federal poverty level. if 52% of them are reporting food insecurity, right? I'm telling you, we're talking about insurrection stuff. We're talking about
So
loss of
I
social
It's
order
absolutely,
stuff.
I
edge.
absolutely agree, and I think we can all agree. The three of us can agree. There is a need for a compromise and an understanding
We got to
and
solve this problem.
solutions. And the solutions Kevin presented, the solutions Saul presented. I always provide the solution of. I'm just going to put this
Foster
out there, and I
kids.
think we're going to wrap it up because he's got to get. Is education. Let's get people on. Let's get more creative lawmakers through education. Let's create a national Montessori public education system, even if it means going down
Well,
that
people got
making
to
them.
eat first, coach. So let me ask you a quick
Absolutely.
question. Let me ask you a quick question. Okay, how did FDR save capitalism?
Through socialism. Essentially through
Well,
socialism.
essentially, right. But he made the argument to the wealthy that
And
they're
we
going
are
to
at
have to
that
give
point
some
Kevin,
where we
back,
need to get
and
back to
that's
Kevin,
where
that
we
point.
we are
But
there
it may be
now.
a
Kevin,
it
you
may
and I
be
are complete agreement, and I just want to end on this. My parents spent their entire political career passing charter schools, which is cool, and it goes to Coach Trippy's space. And my mom said education is the civil rights issue of our time, and I still agree with her on that. I think that's a powerful line that I love that my
what is
mother
that line
used.
again?
Education is the
Education
civil
is
rights
civil
issue
rights.
of our time.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And but you could also say education is the economic divide of our time, right? Maybe it's not race, maybe it's poor white people, right? And you make it about that. But I guess I just want to end on this perspective that, like, I've spent my entire career raising $50 million for family homelessness. The reason why I'm so obsessed about the addicts is I still see them outside. And, like, Kevin, you're right. None of my policies have anything to do with education. I'm such a failed scion of the education people because, like, I have education ideas, but they are so below making sure people are homed, making sure people aren't addicts, making sure people can afford groceries, making sure the public private partnership doesn't die. Because I think you and I both, we have this energy. We have this, like, ooh,
that's right.
we're close to something very bad happening. And
Yes.
I'm not entirely sure it's more Trump or more Katie Wilson is where I get lost in it. I think it's this great tidal shift in the middle where, quality of life coalition. I just say it over and over again. That's the next big thing.
I hear you. I hear
Saul
you.
Spady's got to go.
I
Kevin,
gotta go
Saul,
to
this
it's
has
a
dinner.
been
pleasure.
incredible. He's going to
It was
dinner.
you,
He's going to dinner.
that's right. Hey, Saul, I'm coming up to Seattle next time. I'm going to coordinate with you, my brother, and we're going to get together and we're going to throw a few back and we're going to figure this thing
Let's
out,
solve
man.
some
Kevin, I
problems and
already
You are
let's
did it.
let's
He's a
build
outstanding.
fun
a
guy to
yeah.
hang out
I
with.
love it.
He's a fun guy to hang
I
out with.
can't wait, Kevin. This has been so cool. Coach Trippy, dude, it's cool what you do. You're bringing together P&W people on different sides, but similar
Yeah.
opinions. And, like,
Yeah.
shit, we got to solve the problem before the purge.
That's
Absolutely,
exactly
guys.
right.
And
That's the quote.
I think
Solve
we're
the
gonna bring
problem
you
before
guys
the
together. I
purge.
think we're gonna bring you guys together with other people too. That's my idea is to keep bringing people together like a giant pyramid.
Coach, you got a few minutes after? Because
Yes,
I
sir.
know
Yes,
Saul
sir.
has to go.
Yeah,
Saul,
I got to
enjoy
run, guys.
dinner. Enjoy
Much
dinner.
Take care,
Thank
appreciated.
you so
Saul.
much.
Enjoy it,
Thank you.
man. That's
Thank you.
outstanding. Hey, coach. Okay.
Yeah, but
So here's the
you want me
thing.
to record or no record?
No. Let's keep it
Yeah, absolutely. Oh,
recording
cool,
because
cool.
it's right in the conversation. The thing about it is, when we couch everything with Trump versus, okay, we need to acknowledge that Trump did not go further right. He did not. He actually moved towards the center. That is what RFK Jr. is. That is what Tulsi Gabbard
Tulsi Gabbard.
is. That is what Elon Musk is. These weren't radical conservatives. These were centrists. That's all I'm saying, right? And now what makes Trump feel radical right is because he has activated ICE into this Gestapo and he's breaking into people's houses and he's shooting women in the face and shit like that. Okay, I get it. But but from the political spectrum stuff like Saul was speaking to in terms of, okay, when when the Republican Party brings lifelong Democrats into their administration, that's a centrist move. And what did the Democrats do? They painted Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. like they were radical right. They're not. They're centrist, lifelong Democrat centrists, right? Okay, that's what I'm saying. This is what happens when you try to move to the center, because that's what Trump did. And no one gives him credit for doing it, but
I do
that's what
give
he
him
did.
credit, and I also make the point that RFK did make the offer to Kamala Harris.
Yes,
She
he
absolutely
did.
refused. She
She
absolutely refused.
refused.
So I
That's
do give
exactly
him
right.
credit for accepting. What I've now we've got to give. Now we've got to call it where it is, right?
Yeah.
There is no reason to believe that Trump didn't try to do the right thing. But what he does have that's an issue is a penchant for revenge. He
Oh,
loves
totally.
revenge.
Oh,
So this is
yeah.
where ICE
That's
came in. This is where he
yes.
didn't send ICE into Texas. He didn't send ICE into Dothan, Alabama. He sent
And he
ICE
didn't
into
have to,
Minnesota.
because
It's
what is
not.
the
We
government?
don't know what he had to do. We don't know where. If people, fairly intuitive
Coach,
immigrants,
he
illegal
didn't send
immigrants
ICE into
knew
Florida either. There's a
no.
reason for that,
But so if
because
you're fairly intuitive and you're an illegal immigrant, move to Florida, move to
yes,
Texas, move to
yes.
Dothan, Alabama,
Because
because
what are we?
Trump made it clear
No, no,
this
no,
is
no.
my payback.
Coach, the reason why they don't move to Dothan, Alabama is because the governor of Alabama and local law enforcement in Alabama are not friendly to undocumented. They're not. Neither is Florida. Neither is Texas. This is what I'm saying. The problem that's happening in Minnesota, just like the problem that happens in Portland, is we are talking about communities. And if they're doing it as a civil right, that's fine. Okay, because we had the civil rights movement. Okay, if they're doing it as a social justice thing, that's fine. But let us be clear, we are talking about states actively resisting the federal government in enforcing federal immigration law. That's what we're talking about. I mean, I'm that shooting someone in the face is not enforcing federal
No, but it
immigration
is an
law.
isolated
But
incident.
the overall thing that ICE is doing is to extract people who are here illegally in the United States and export them out of the country. That is the federal law. Okay. And so if a state wants to resist the federal law, then yes, this is the tension. Where's that happening? In the magnet cities, in the magnet states? Of course. Okay, it's not happening in Florida and Alabama and Texas, because they're enforcing federal immigration laws. Okay, so I mean that's the issue. Okay, this is
But
not
again,
left in.
this is part and parcel of a Trump flaw is he derives pleasure out of antics. So again, I make the
Oh,
point that Obama and Clinton deported 1.6 million people without the fanfare, without ice and hoods, without
because
unfortunately a
because yes, because we didn't resist Obama like we're resisting Trump.
no, because Trump encourages the
Oh,
resistance because he is a fan of antics.
no,
He
no, well,
likes
you
it.
say he encourages the resistance. Okay, I will say this much: when Obama did it, we didn't act this way,
I,
and
I'm
therefore
not. I'm not.
you didn't
No one
have the
can say,
conflict, but
you know,
because
I love
Obama was the exporter in chief. I mean,
he was
where
absolutely.
was the
And
protest?
Obama,
Where was the protest?
I've
See,
pointed
this is
out.
the hypocrisy of our house,
So
of the
let me show you the
progressives.
difference between Obama and Trump in a sense, okay? In a
Yeah.
sense. Obama talked about during the campaign, I've told you, the Unger House in the Cayman Islands. It houses 64,000
Yes. Yes.
corporations for
Yes.
tax evasion,
Yes.
tax laws, tax loopholes. Let me take back tax evasion because that would be considered a misstep by YouTube. For tax loopholes. He called it in his own words, the biggest tax scam of all. And then nominated Timothy Geithner and then Jack Lew to the Treasury Secretary positions in which it's like putting the fox in charge of
Yeah.
the hen
Yeah.
house.
Complete
Okay,
betrayal.
Obama and his one of the things I was reflecting the other day because I have to do a presentation at 1 million cups of coffee during his exit interview after 8 years. He said, "I'm leaving office, and here I am at this grandiose event saying thank you, goodbye." 8 years ago, you would have never believed me if I told you we're going to create 1.8 million jobs in the course of this 8 years. But you know what? They were crappy jobs.
Boom.
Nobody,
Boom.
nobody. So I can tell you from my own
Yeah.
personal experience, not from an Obama quote, at that time of his administration, I had 4 jobs at once, only to try and raise the money I needed to do certain things I wanted to accomplish. They were
But you know
low
who did
paying
well? You know
jobs.
who did well under Obama? Extreme
The
wealth.
rich, yes.
The
So
rich.
to that point,
Exactly.
and I go
What-
back to that point, tax extenders, which is a law. It was basically hundreds of loopholes. Then Mitt Romney himself wrote Obama a letter and said corporate America is having trouble planning for the future because all these loopholes are temporary. And Obama signed them into law permanently. So you've got permanent tax loopholes, and then you've got
Mhm.
Republicans saying the benchmark needs to be 15%. You're at 15% in corporate America with all these freaking loopholes. Now you're passing under Trump a $4 trillion corporate tax cut that brings you down to about 4%.
Oh
But they're
no, it's
both
a continuous.
hand
It's
in
it.
hand on the
eh,
same bullshit.
Well, okay, okay, because I don't think. Okay, I accept what you're saying about Obama, and I accept the fact that there's no doubt in the big beautiful bill, Trump is doing the establishment Republican thing. You know, in the no new taxes was became the Republican mantra in the 90s. And they have followed that train ever since. They're the main drivers of lower taxes, lower taxes, lower taxes for mostly prominent, wealthy people. Okay. But okay, the idea is and so Trump, every once in a while, his economic policy is going to be traditional establishment Republican, throw him a bone. This is what it takes us to get something through the Congress. And he does it, right?
With a
That is
smile, with a
what is
shit eating grin
well,
on his face.
well, okay.
The other
That should
politicians were
that
better than that,
smile
or
and
worse than
that
that.
smile and shit eating grin is because the Democrats crossed him. Look, there is a huge difference. I think we are seeing the Roy Cohn side of Donald Trump, and I think
He
the reason
says
why
he learned a lot from Roy
yeah.
Cohn.
Oh, yes, of course.
He
And
says it. He's not
And Roy
denying
Cohn,
it. He's
this
not
no,
denying who
he's not
he
denying it.
is.
That's what I'm saying. It's not a revelation. He's expressly right. This is who he is. The Democrats crossed him by indicting him as a former president. That's full stop. You don't understand. That's the first time in U.S. history that we've indicted a former president, as if he's the first time, as if he's the first president who's ever done anything illegal. I mean, it's just not true, and we know it's not true. But we never indict them. Biden
No,
broke that rule.
we
He's the one who
indicted
did it,
Clinton. We
and so
indicted Clinton, and you know why we indicted Clinton?
we,
Because
we
he did.
didn't we didn't who in no no no
He was
no we're not
impeached.
talking no, that's not what I'm talking about. Trump was impeached what two times in his
Maybe
first
I
term.
don't know
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah, what I'm saying is they impeached. That's no that we do, that we do. I'm talking about the state attorney general or district attorneys in different municipalities actually charging a sitting
Oh,
pre a former president. We have never done that. Washington D.C. had every authority to indict Richard Nixon for the break-in, for his association in the break-in of the Watergate Hotel in their
and they
jurisdiction.
didn't do it.
No, he didn't do it, and his pardon would not have stopped the municipality because all the pardon is only for federal enforcement,
Federal, right?
right? So that's what I'm saying. That is our tradition. And Obama was smart enough not to break it when we asked him to go after Dick Cheney and George W. Bush for the torture campaign, right?
Right.
Okay, because he said it would cause a constitutional crisis. Biden did this to Trump, and that crossed Trump in a way that you talk. Okay, this is Roy Cohn. And the only response that you can expect from Trump is for him to destroy everything that Biden did. That's the vitriol. So he militarizes ICE. Why? Because Biden reversed his immigration policy and then let in what? Another 5 million plus
Well, no,
undocumented people?
I think it was 1.2 million, but I'm going to tell you something about that.
No, no, no,
So,
no. It's
I've
more
got
than
this
that, my
book. I don't know
brother.
if you can see it here.
1.2 million.
I've
Yes,
got
I
this
could
book
see
right here.
hope on the
Hope
board.
on the Border. This guy Gil Gillenwater wrote this amazing book. It's an amazing book. He spent his life on the border, and he said I watched with my own two eyes these 1.2 million cross over the border,
And why do you keep on
and
saying 1.2 million? The Homeland Security Administration during the Biden administration had that number dramatically higher.
okay, so whatever the number is, let's not argue the number. 5 million. I'm in agreement with five
It's
million. I'm in agreement.
I was
So
going
let's say
low.
I'm
They
just
said
saying
8 million.
this was all to adhere to the progressive expectation. Then came Kamala Harris. I'm running for president. On the View, would you do anything different? No,
No.
no, not a thing. No, no. Close the fucking border, honey. I don't understand how hard that was to say. Because you know what? We're all unhappy with that policy. I don't know about the particulars of every progressive, but I do know the effects you had by letting people in when you don't have a standard, when they could possibly be drug dealers you're letting in. That's an issue with
That's
everyone.
it. That's why the American
So
public in the
Trump
election
said,
was
don't
supportive of
pass a
Trump
law.
over that.
Don't give Biden the law in the House. Don't allow the House to pass this law. I want this to be a campaign issue. He made it clear. He said, I'm going to make this a campaign issue. If your guy you're running against says, I'm going to make this a campaign issue, try to deflect the issue. Don't sit on the view and say, it's not an issue. It's not an issue.
I agree. I totally agree with you. I totally, but
So
okay,
I
but
just say to that point, it's Democrats that have made this problem significantly worse for us than Trump himself.
right. And so that is why his overreaction is such an overreaction, is because he's responding to how Biden responded. And how Biden responded was to reverse his policy. And the effect was to make it worse. We could talk about how much worse, but it absolutely made Biden's immigration policy was a failure, right? And so he is reversing it again, and he is going way over the top by militarizing ICE and sending thousands into certain communities where the maximum resistance is. I
Absolutely,
mean,
but you know,
in my opinion, I have said this, and I'm going to say this aloud on your podcast. The, this is a mistake to fight the federal government on national immigration law. This is a mistake.
no,
Do
all I've
I
ever said,
feel
I'm not fighting them.
I
All I've ever
well,
said is
that's what we're doing. That's what
Bush
Minnesota is doing.
Bush
That's
President
what
Jr. W. Bush said, "Let's create a guest worker program." Then he said it didn't pass because Harry Reid was asleep. I don't know where Harry. Oh, I don't know what you didn't know, but you should have gotten your limo, the big beast, and drove over to Harry Reid's house and woke his ass up. Because if you would have passed the guest worker problem, the guest worker immigration program, you would have eliminated this problem we had today. You would have created some sort of policy for people here in America who are here to work and drawn a baseline on what they can receive for benefits and everything else that was in that bill. So so let's talk about that for a second. But here's generally Trump's issue is for most politicians, Obama said I'm going to close Guantanamo Bay. Became president. I'm a candidate. I can say whatever the hell I want. Consequences are key. When he became president, they said you can't close Guantanamo Bay. So all he did was he moved the prisoners to other permanent facilities around the world. You haven't. The metaphor of Guantanamo Bay was we can't have these criminals charged in a court because it would release national secrets. You haven't eliminated that problem. All you've done is move prisoners to other places where they'll never be tried. Whereas Trump says, I made a promise, I'm keeping it. Consequences? Fuck consequences. I said I'm going to close the education department. Reagan said it, and it grew in size and scope. This crazy bastard closed it. You know what? Consequences are no issue with him. And that's what some people are revering about him is he made a promise and he keeps them.
that's it. Me too. All I'm saying is I all I'm saying is that we are spending so much energy fighting against ICE when ICE, even though we don't like it, and I'm an open immigration guy, that's the American tradition. Check it out, right? That's why we have the Statue of Liberty. It's because we were an open immigration nation, right? But the fact is our duly elected Congress decades ago passed immigration laws which restrict access to the United States. And it is the authority of Congress to do that. Okay. And so if we are saying that the federal government cannot enforce federal law, we are undermining the way the Kennedy administration enforced civil rights law in the South. We're undermining the way the Kennedy administration enforced Brown versus Board of Education, the U.S. Supreme Court decision to integrate to end segregation. Right? The Kennedy administration took command of the Alabama National Guard and made sure that that woman was able to walk, even though the governor was standing on the University of Alabama's front door, right? And she got walked in past the governor. Okay, this this is the supremacy clause of the United States. If we're saying that Trump is not following the Constitution, I don't understand what we're talking about. He has every right to enforce immigration law. He does. I don't, you may not like it. And if you want to say that the law is unjust, because that was the argument with the civil rights movement, then either take a page out of Dr. King and Gandhi's book and engage in civil disobedience, but understand nonviolent civil disobedience means that you're going to get beaten and you're going to get killed. What happened to the freedom marchers? What happened to Bull Connor with the dogs and the hoses?
Well, I hope
Okay,
we never get to that
be,
point where innocent people,
well,
more
no, no,
innocent people, get
but the
killed.
point is that if you're taking the moral principle that that an immoral law is no law at all, that was the civil rights movement, then you need to accept the fact that you're going to get beaten, that you're going to get shot in the
Well, I
face,
hope we don't get to
right?
that point because there's other options other than beatings. There are
So as
taser
far as
guns
I'm
and
concerned, this is not where we should be fighting the fight.
no.
There's other areas that we should be fighting
I
the fight.
I chalk it up to he, generally speaking, a politician folds at a politician folds when beatings are filmed on TV. There is a
Yes.
theory, in
Yeah.
theory and in practice, the
Usually,
Vietnam War
usually,
became one of the most
yeah.
unpopular wars because it was the first time war was televised. So then when we televised the Iraq War, it was entirely a different vision. It was a bomb going down a chimney of a building we were particularly targeting, but the image of that chimney exploding and a brick hitting an old lady in the middle of the street didn't actually get processed on
No,
CNN.
no.
So,
We saw the
but this
chimney and it looked
president's
cool. Yeah.
okay with that brick swinging out into the road and taking out a school bus and veering off into a ditch. It happens. I mean, he'll answer. It happens. I forget what he recently had a response to, and it was like, I mean, Pete Hegseth ordered another missile fired at people swimming off a boat that was just demolition by his first missile. I
Hey.
mean, and Trump's like, I don't like the, I mean, I'm okay with drug dealers getting killed. Well, there's all sorts of issues with that. One is, according to your own guy, Rand Paul, there is no fentanyl being produced in Venezuela, and it would take 20 refuels to get that small boat from Venezuela to America. So we're not so sure you got the right boat. But he's okay with it because it just and
Yeah.
so you're up against a lot when you're up against that logic. When you're up against a guy that's just impervious to everything that everybody else is simply not impervious to, but he simply is, you're up against a lot to argue logical arguments.
Right. Well, again, okay, this is why underestimating him is such a mistake. All right. Saying that he doesn't know what he's doing, saying that he's a boob, saying that he's stupid, and stuff like that, except that that he's successful at doing what he wants to do. I mean, I'm just saying, okay, he understands that he cannot run again. I
Right.
don't even know
And he's
what okay, so because let's play that out for a second. Do you really think, because it's unconstitutional for him to run again? So, which do you think the Republican Party is going to try to abdicate the U.S. Constitution by
no, absolutely. He
allowing
doesn't even have that
no? So
support.
so
No.
there's no
Republicans are
mechanism.
ready to close to
That's what I'm
chapter
saying. There is
2.
no mechanism for him to
No.
run again. Why we say
No.
that does not make sense, and he's not even going to try. He's not
No, and he's
stupid.
even saying
That's what I'm saying.
if JD Vance wins, he can
Yeah.
give me the presidency, but I don't see that JD Vance is going to give him the presidency. I
No.
mean, who the
No.
hell thinks that's going to happen?
No. So what I'm saying. So that's first and foremost.
That's
So
all creations from
if
the
you,
Democrats.
yes, if you understand if that he is a lame duck president, the thing about the president in his second term, where he never has to face the voters again, is he gets to do what he
He's
wants to do.
infallible and
He's infallible.
impervious.
So he's acting that way because he knows, and he's trying, and so he's building what he considers his legacy by trying to cut certain deals, by trying to set certain things in motion, so that the next administration, if certainly if it's a Democrat, cannot undo what he's doing. Okay, and he is, I mean, all yes. So I just think that there are substantive long-term things that we should be fighting, that we should be putting our energy in resisting. What he's doing in the climate space is catastrophic for America.
It's a
I, I,
lot of
I
things.
cannot,
The
what him
lack of
repealing the,
acknowledgement, like you said, when you think of how you put it in perspective, as far as the environment, as far as the with the day where we're no longer producing what we're using. When we get to those days, there needs to be acknowledgement. How we get to that point of acknowledgement, how we get to that point of there's one people saying it's simply not true, and other people saying it's an absolute catastrophe on the way. We got to get to some understanding that this is real. The fact that Trump isn't acknowledging it doesn't change a single thing for him, and that's what he's
no,
really about is himself.
yeah,
I
it's
mean, there
himself. It
will
does,
be no shortage of his love for McDonald's in whatever he has left on
oh, hey,
Earth.
he's in his 80s or early
Yeah, there
80s,
will be no shortage of Big Macs and whatever he has left
and
on Earth. And that's the way he sees it. He doesn't see it like me and you, what's there for our kids. I don't even know that he used to have this dire friendship with his daughter. I'm not so sure that's even there, and I'm not so sure he wakes up at night thinking about it. I can't speak for him personally, but the connection doesn't seem to be there anymore. So, so, when you think of Trump as an individual, as the last few years of his presidency, as you're up against a lot. You're up against a lot. You're up against when you talk about how uh, hypocritical he can be in his statements and his tones and his previous and his previous news interviews. They show him saying, if I run for president, I would run as a Republican because Republicans are idiots. If they throw that at him in an interview, he says, somehow he'll just say it was nothing to be even thought about. You know, I mean, he's not your average bear. You're up against a lot when you're trying to really pin him down on something.
yeah, but the thing is, and this is the legacy stuff that people need to be looking at, and not the stuff, not the ICE issue, not the immigration issue, right? Is that, and I am supportive of some of these things. He will end NATO.
Well, I'm
He
not
has
supportive of that
he's
until you have an
no,
alternate
well,
until you
no,
have it.
well, hear me for a second. He is, and he has allowed the last of the nuclear nonproliferation treaties to expire because of the idiocy of Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama. They forced the Russians to develop hypersonic missile technology, right? And now all the limiting treaty legislation that they always honored has expired. The balance of nuclear power in this world is not in favor of the United States. Okay. So what he's done is put the United States in a situation where 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 Russia has greater first strike capabilities, than we do. And so that is what I'm saying here is he's destroying the establishment's ability to use Russia as the permanent enemy that they could run the military industrial complex through, because the balance of power between Russia and the United States is shifting towards Russia on a military front, right? He is doing this, right? So, in other words, you either negotiate with them or you risk losing to Russia, right? Okay, we are beating the drum about Iran. Watch who blinks. We're not doing shit because China and Russia is going to make sure. Oh, okay, it's going to hurt this time. We were gentle with Israel the last time, just telling them what we're capable of doing.
Well, it was the
But
United States was the
if you
major
if you
aggressor
attack
there.
us this time, it's going to be for real.
We have to
And
see
and
how
and
all
and
that plays out
yeah,
because I
and
think
we can't
everybody's
do
around the blame.
anything about it. This is what I'm saying. He is stripping away the establishment Republican and establishment Democratic geopolitical, geoeconomical strategy, how they made their bones, how they dominated. The rules based order is done. And if we're going down the path where the United States will lose the reserve status of the US currency. That is game over. This all those things were the infrastructure that allowed extreme wealth to build its fortune over the last 50 years. Trump is dismantling all of it. You could elect Bernie Sanders or some take Ma'am Donnie right in 2028, and I'm telling you, you're not going to be able to put the pieces back together. Our allies are pissed off at us. I mean, look, Canada is looking for alliances with China, right? I mean, this is what he's done. He's denied the establishment the infrastructure that they use to control the world. He's dismantling all of it, and we're going to have to what? Play nice. We're going to have to negotiate with these folks, right? Otherwise, we're not going to be in the position to put our thumb on them. This is what Russia has proven in Ukraine, right? I mean, whatever you want to say, they are controlling that situation, and there's nothing we can do about it, right? That is the balance of power on a military front. And so, if we want to resist them, and you think any of those things are worth fighting for, that is something you should fight for. To resist the federal government's enforcement of federal law is to emasculate future
Well, I
Democratic
don't know that.
presidents.
I'm always curious about what Democrats have in mind when they take back the presidency. I'm always wondering if Trump's not their crash dummy because I'm just I'm just wondering. They've got a lot of. I always refer back to Stephen Miller, who was talking about creating an action-packed committee that was going to say the president should control the Supreme Court's budget, and Democrats out and Democrats acted outraged, and I'm like, but they're really thinking when they're president they could control the Supreme Court's budget, and so you can form that outrage and share that outrage all you want, but how many going, wow, how cool would that be? If we could control the budget. I mean, there is six conservatives on the court. If we could just stymie any case we want by not funding it, I mean, how? I mean, you got to be careful of what you believe in and what you don't necessarily
Yes,
believe.
I do. And so that's why I bring the history. As unpopular as it is to say that that fighting the ICE thing is the wrong fight, right?
Well, it's not.
The
I
base
thought they
the
retrieved
base
some of the. I thought they retrieved most of everything from Mississippi, or is that still going on? From
yeah.
Minnesota, or is that still going on?
Oh no, they're pulling back. The
Yeah.
damage is already done. The
Right.
message
The
is already
damage is
sent.
done. I mean,
Yeah, I
and it's
mean, people
unfortunate
are already
because,
dead. I mean,
yeah.
and so and believe me, if Minnesota becomes a haven, they'll be back. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's not because they are crestfallen and stuff like that. It's not because we had some massive success, right? It's horrible what happened in Minnesota, but what I'm saying here is the just to what you said, the long-term effect of saying that the states have a right to resist the enforcement of federal law. That the state of Alabama had a right to resist desegregation. Is that what we're saying? Because
No,
that's
no, everything's
we're okay.
hypocritical.
No,
Everything's
that's what
hypocritical,
that's the
but
hypocritical
the
part.
problem
Is that
is
we have
the
to be
my
careful
issue
what
is
we're
the
saying.
antics. My issue is the antics. It's like you said, Obama was the
Oh, the professor in chief. I mean, he's so smooth. This is
and
this
he's
is
the
this is
captain of integrity, and he was
yes,
the
yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
yeah. No, no, no.
He
Don't
was
get me
the
started.
deporter in chief too. I
He
mean,
was a deporter in chief.
I still
He's
don't think that Donald Trump is at his numbers with all his effort. I don't think. I mean, granted, Trump's on his sixth year. I don't think he's at
oh,
Obama's
I
numbers yet.
think first and foremost to actually close to stop the flood to shut it down.
Right, but
That's a big
the
no no
deportation in and
no.
of
Well, yeah,
itself.
well, okay. You have to look at the net number too.
We don't know
If
what
you
that
if
is. I mean, Trump will tell you it's 10 million. I know for a fact Obama was about 1.2 million. That's a real figure. That's
yeah,
not a Trump figure. I know Clinton was at about 600,000. That's a real figure. They didn't gloat about him. They didn't brag about him. It's like my wife says when somebody says I got $1 million, be careful, buy him lunch. When somebody says I'm broke, they're fine. the Trump thing, the Trump numbers is a little different than reality. I mean, he recently, I think, published some deportation numbers, and they were completely outlandish,
Uh,
and no one really. But I'm not so sure. This is just what I'm saying. I'm not
You
forming an
really, you
opinion.
really think with all these actions around the country that
It
they're not
seems
making
like a lot
you
of
don't think they're at seizing I mean, we see them taking people.
We do, but seeing them
Yeah.
take 1.2 million people is a lot of seeing, and we haven't seen that. What
Oh, I'm just saying.
we have seen a plane go to Colombia or something with 200 people, and they said we don't even have the proper paperwork, and then Trump screamed and fiddled and dithered, and they said, okay, we'll just take. I'm not having an argument with the president of the United States. We'll take these 200 people in. Then there was so that was real antics for people saying Trump's tough, and then came the idea of paying certain countries like El Salvador to take people in. It's all a matter of one person at a time. I don't see 1.2 million people deported on Trump's watch in all of the 6 years he's been president. I don't see that number transpiring. No, I don't. I think it's again the whole Trump throwing figures out there. I just signed a $10 trillion deal with Saudi Arabia. Where is it? Where are these businesses popping up? Where
oh,
is this revenue?
given the size and the actual activity around the country of ICE.
There's a
I
lot of
mean,
activity, but there's a lot
yeah,
of new
you really think
agents. I
you really
don't see
think
1.2
he's
million.
he's
No.
he's doing far less with far more than Obama.
I don't know. I
Because I mean,
don't know. I
because
have all my
Obama was
doubts
able to do what he
when
did
Trump
with a
says
much
10,
smaller ICE.
when Trump says 10, I assume
Where-
1. When Trump says 1,000, I assume 100. I'm not so
I'm just
sure.
saying, no, all I'm saying is that just assuming that ICE is functioning the way it does, the way it did for Obama, the way it does for him, right? I mean, he's not managing ICE directly, right? He's not in the rank and file, okay? I mean, if you simply look at the size and the activity, the level of activity, and the infrastructure that they set up, all types of tents, all types of holding
I,
facilities, all
I
that.
think it's
All I'm
antics.
saying is that okay, it does suggest that it could handle the volume he's talking
I
about.
I
It,
disagree, but I don't have any
you
leg to
you
stand on. I know who his manager is. When you say Trump's
I'm
not
not saying
managing,
his
I
numbers are
know
good
who
numbers.
his
I'm just saying,
manager
but
is Stephen Miller, who I'm not completely his managerial gravitas is not there either. I'm not
oh,
sure.
Stephen Miller, no, just that, no. Oh my God. But here's the thing. All I'm saying is hey, his immigrations are, whew, he's no joke though. I mean, do you
I
remember?
mean, he's no joke
You
according to
remember Sheriff Joe Arpaio?
another one that was antics was everything, dressing
No,
people up in
no.
pink
Oh,
outfits.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, come
Don't
on.
you? No. All I got to say is, I know I lived there for years, and I told my sons, just don't wind up in his tent. Just don't wind up in his tent
Don't,
because
but
I'm telling you, you're going to be in the pink and you're going to be eating the gray meat and throwing up for days. Yes, he was no joke.
he was no
Okay,
joke on a
that
one-off
guy running
scenario. But
that guy running, the immigration czar for Trump. You look at him. Look, I mean, that's
oh,
exactly. I
you're
mean,
talking about. I know who you're talking about. He's another talker and a
just
bullshitter
no, but
too.
he's serious business. I mean, all I'm saying, I'm not saying a nice guy, a sweetheart. No, this is a guy who's up all night thinking about dragging people out of their beds.
I'm
I
sure
mean,
he
because
is,
look at the
but
people we're talking about. People are taken out of their. They're not allowed to put on their slippers.
it's kind of like there
I
was
mean, damn.
it's kind
Do
of
we
like in
gotta
New
be like that?
York. There was a mobster. His name was Genovese, and he used to walk up and down the street in a bathrobe. And he never went to jail, and he got a lot done. And then there was John Gotti with the suits and the entourage and the limos, and who knows who is more effective in their roles? Who really
Fair
knows?
enough. That's fair enough. All I can say is that yes, we need to find the real numbers. His numbers are not
His
real,
numbers aren't real, and will we
but
ever? Will
understand
we
that most
ever?
of these numbers that we get are not real, and it didn't start with
But
him.
Obama's numbers were real. Clinton's numbers were real. 1.2 million. Obama didn't really present himself as being the deporter in chief.
I don't know
Obama,
why do you okay, could you help me to understand Why do you believe Obama's numbers were real?
Because in this is why. I'll answer that question. I think we need to wrap it up after this. This is why.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't flattering to have high deportation numbers where it was like Clinton said we're going to have a $4 trillion surplus, and everybody's like the economy would have to stay so strong for so long to achieve this $4 trillion surplus. And sure enough, those who told him that, the economy crashed and those numbers never transpired. You've got to have the employment. You've got to have the tax revenue. You're projecting things you just can't project. But Clinton saw it as this victory. I'm leaving the Oval Office with a $4 trillion surplus. We haven't seen before. Same as when Trump leaves, he's going to say, I deported 11 million people on my watch. I don't think we did. I'm just saying I don't think we did. I can't speak. I don't have the numbers. The Congressional Budget Office isn't calling me in the morning with actual figures. I'm telling you, I just don't buy it. I just
Go
don't
into
buy it.
okay. How about this? Go into your Chat GPT
I
and
wonder, but they're getting
see if
fed those.
Chat can
They're
get some.
searching a lot of things, and those figures are
Yeah.
all antiquated at this
No,
point.
no, no. That's no, no. I understand. That's why you have to be meticulous with Chat. But Chat is not Chat is not stupid. Also, don't ask Chat what's the prevailing narrative on the numbers. Ask Chat based on all available information. Give me an estimate of the number of exportations in the United States in 2025. Trump has been in for a year.
I could
Okay,
do it
what
right
were they?
now.
Yeah, and I mean,
Say that
they
again.
do. Yeah, see what they say. I don't know that they're not going to just quote
I'll see what they
everyone
say.
who's quoting the president,
I'm gonna do it right
and
now.
they will source their information
So based on all available information, what would the
based on
figure be for Donald Trump's deportations in
no,
2025?
no. Just it doesn't have to say. You don't have to list Donald Trump. What would what is the estimated number of deportations in the United States in 2025?
Okay, let's do that. I was about to answer and I ended. Okay. Okay, let me start it. Based on all available information, what would be the estimated number of deportations in America from America in 2025?
In 2025, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security reported 605,000 deportations, but independent analysts at the Brookings Institution estimated a more realistic number of around 310,000 to 315,000 formal revokes. The large difference
Yeah,
comes because the DHS figure likely includes voluntary departures, while Brookings counted only formal revokes. In short,
yeah.
our evidence-based estimate is about
So
300,000.
these are now the
So
realistic
now, so
numbers
you're at 300,000 in the first year of his presidency, which
yeah
possibly brings you to 1.2 million over the course of his
over the
presidency.
course.
Which means he's either tied with Obama, or if he and his lovely illustrious staff lose fascination with the whole issue, they're not going to meet Obama's numbers. We're still
Oh, they're
at
not going to lose fascination. They already got it
you're
budgeted.
still
They
at
already
though.
got it. They
Okay,
got a
so we're
massive
still
budget.
at okay, so you still confirmed everything I said. Their figures are bloated.
Their
The
figures are bloated, of course. Uh,
their real estimate's 300,000, which still brings you to within Obama's numbers.
okay, so then how about this? Now ask Chat based on all available information. Can you can you can you tell me whether the Obama administration's official deportation numbers or align
Yeah, I'll ask it.
with all available information at that for that same period of time?
Can you tell me if the Obama deportation number of 1.2 million during the course of his 8-year presidency is accurate?
Perfect.
The number 1.2 million is not accurate for total deportations under Barack Obama. From 2009 to 2013, the total of formal returns was about 3.2 million, roughly 800,000 per year. The confusion often comes from mixing different categories like removals versus returns, so no official source supports that exact 1.2 million total figure.
But here's the contrast. Obama underestimated because it's not flattering. Trump overestimated because in his delusional thought process. It is flattering. Delusional thought
Yeah.
process. I like
Well,
that.
all
So
I'm just saying, right? The point here
okay, so
is
they're
the point.
literally saying Obama was at 3.2 million in 4 years. They only
Yeah.
quoted 4-year period. He started
Yeah.
the whole mission in his first either
Yes.
that was the report of his second term, or I don't remember the years exactly because I guess go back to the actual printed statement, but
Yeah.
they were only talking about 4 years of his presidency. They said
But
I don't know if it was
here's
the
the thing.
first 4 years or the second 4 years, but
But coach, all the whole point of us going down this path was not to prove that Obama was more effective than he said he was, but to prove
okay,
that
so they are saying
that
that
his
the
numbers are not accurate and neither are Trump's. Yeah, I know the presidents lie to us all the time. The official numbers all over the damn place
But the
for
point is,
political
again, you're at
reasons.
3.2 million. They were saying it was that 8-year period. It was the whole 8-year period, but you're still
Yeah,
at 3.2 million. They're still saying we're using ChatGPT now as the deciding factor. We've agreed on that. There is no
because it's
more.
yeah we're doing
Right.
that. That's
We've
right.
agreed at that. That's the standard. That's all you can do. You can go to another standard, but right now ChatGPT is the
Because
standard.
it's
You
all
got
available information.
3.2 million for
Yeah,
Obama's 8 years. You've got under 300,000 for Trump's first year of this term. It's again, it's like I said, to some people it's flattering, to some people it's not really flattering.
but coach, we didn't go down this path to prove that Obama was a better exporter in chief
No,
than
not at
Trump.
all. We
We went
went
down
down
this
this path
path.
because you're saying you see the agents on the street. Does that mean you have enormous
No, what
activity?
I
And it doesn't
no, we went down this
necessarily.
path because you talk about Trump's numbers not being real. I agree that Trump's numbers are not real. My point was is every president's numbers are not real. And then we went and proved that Obama's numbers were
It's
not
not
real. That's what I'm
real,
saying.
but you go in
It
the
may be real.
reverse. In
Right.
a
But
sense, you have a
yes,
sense of humility
yes,
there. You have a sense of
no, it's not humility. It is politics.
human
It
consequence.
no, it's
Human
not.
consequence
You
was something
said
Obama considered.
yourself, coach, for Obama's electorate, having high deportation numbers was not good. So he lied and
He's a
understated.
bullshitter.
For Trump, having as high as possible is, and so he lies and overstated. That's all I'm saying. It's
They're
politics. They
both
don't tell.
bullshitters.
They're bullshit. They don't tell us the truth. That's all I'm saying. You have to check the numbers regardless,
We
no matter
checked
who's.
them. We checked them. We determined they're both bullshitters, but we also determined that the more effective deporter in chief was Obama.
Exactly. Okay. So let's wrap up the podcast. And because I have a question to ask you, not a big policy question, but offline. So you wrap up the
Okay,
podcast
so
and
hey
then
everybody, this has been an incredible conversation with Kevin Howard, author, podcaster, Breadcrumbs, an incredible podcast, incredible book, Onward,
at last, the
Onward at Last,
2024
2024
presidential
edition.
election edition. That's
And
right.
then we had Saul Spady, who is essentially a social entrepreneur, political activist his entire life, growing up with his parents, fighting for bringing in charter schools into Seattle. Great guest. This is Political No Brainer, the podcast where we move past winner takes all politics and into real conversation. We are wrapping this one up tonight. It was a great, fantastic conversation, and it is a wrap.